Chapter 214. The two maids in charge of taking care of Song Jining were called Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu. Gu Nianji had seen them before and remembered them clearly. I don't know, go ask. Xiaoheng focused on his egg-fried rice and gave Gu Nianji a chance to approach Song Jining. Gu Nianji finished the porridge in a few mouthfuls and came out to look for Song Jining. She walked around and finally saw Song Jining in the small bedroom inside. She wore a large embroidered begonia shawl and stood in front of the window, staring blankly at the sky outside. The bedroom was very small and the top floor was very low. The room was full of furniture, and although they looked expensive, there were too many of them and it was very depressing. Just like the human heart, if it was filled with too many things, it would appear narrow and easy to be calculative and tired. This kind of space was not suitable for people with psychological problems. Gu Nianji herself had psychological problems in her early years because she had been frightened too much. For example, she often had night terrors at night and couldn't stay in a closed space alone, let alone see a fire. Later, with Chunlai and Xiaoheng's joint efforts, she recovered day by day. If she had lived in such a small room back then, her psychological problems would have been even more serious and she would not have recovered at all. It was because Gu Nianji had experienced it herself that she sympathized with Song Jining even more. It wasn't just because she was Xiaoheng's mother. Song Jining's side profile was breathtakingly beautiful. Although she had been sick for so many years, she was like a beautiful flower that had bloomed to the end of its life. But because she was about to wither, she was even more beautiful. Like the sunset glow of the setting sun, her beauty was indescribable. Only a mother like this could have given birth to a son as handsome as Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji sighed internally as she walked in and stood next to Song Jining. She said gently, "Mrs. Song?" Song Jining turned around and smiled at her. "Are you done eating? Was it good?" "Yes." Gu Nianji nodded. "Did you have breakfast?" "I didn't." Song Jining sighed. "I couldn't eat." Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat. She gently held Song Jining's wrist and realized she was really only bones. Song Jining already had serious psychological and mental problems. If her health was affected as well, she would really become a disabled person. She could only wait for death. Gu Nianji felt uneasy. Her intuition had always been accurate, and because she was a woman, she could empathize with Song Jining's situation. "Mrs. Song, shall we go for a walk?" Gu Nianji gently shook her arm. "Shall we go for a walk in the garden? You're a member of the Hua family and this is my first time here. Can you show me around?" Song Jining suddenly blushed. "I'm not married yet." "You can't call me Madam, Gu Nianji." When the Hua family called her Mrs. Song, she didn't object at all. Now, she didn't even want to be called Mrs. Song anymore. Did her condition worsen? Or is her condition getting better? Gu Nianji immediately decided that she couldn't delay any longer. If Song Jining's condition worsened, then the treatment method needed to be changed immediately. If her condition improved, then the effective treatment method needed to help her recover as soon as possible. "Mrs. Song, shall we go to the garden to have a look?" Gu Nianji wanted to take Song Jining out to have some fun. "Xiao and I just brought some gifts for you. It's almost New Year, shall we try them out?" "Gifts? Are they for me?" Song Jining was surprised and happy. "I have gifts too?" "Yes, we've eaten so many delicious meals from you, so of course we have to return the favor. Wait here, I'll go get it. You can change right away, then we can go downstairs and play in the garden together, okay?" Gu Nianji tried her best to persuade Song Jining. She turned around and ran to the living room to get the Chanel paper bag. As soon as she went out, she saw Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu were already there. They were looking through the Chanel paper bag she had brought. "Put it down. How can you touch the owner's things?" Gu Nianji's face darkened as she stopped the two of them rudely. Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu hadn't expected Gu Nianji to be in Song Jining's bedroom. Their expressions were a bit awkward as they reluctantly put down the paper bag and said to Gu Nianji, "Miss Hua said that we have to carefully inspect everything that's given to Mrs. Song. We're just following Miss Song's instructions. If Miss Gu doesn't agree, you can tell Miss Song. What's the point of yelling at servants like us?" "That's right. People who don't know better would think that she's the head of the Hua family. I don't know where she came from, but she dares to act like a big boss in front of us." The corners of Auntie Yu's mouth twitched. Her disdain was obvious. She really didn't care about Gu Nianji at all. If their words had been directed at an ordinary girl, she would probably have cursed them in her heart at most and wouldn't have dared to make a big deal out of it. But they had picked the wrong target. Gu Nianji had never been a pushover. She had been worried about not being able to find an opportunity to change Song Jining's situation. Now that a great opportunity had been presented to her, she immediately came up with a plan. She burst into tears and ran to the small kitchen. She threw herself into Hua Xiaoheng's arms and stomped her feet. Hua Xiao. They're chasing me out. I don't have the face to stay here anymore. I want to go home. I want to go home. Hua Xiaoheng had heard everything that had happened outside from the small kitchen, but he was too lazy to go out. A few maids didn't listen to him, so he had fired them. He didn't want to waste too much effort at all. But when Gu Nianji cried and threw a tantrum, he knew that something was wrong. Nianji. He pushed her away and frowned. What's wrong? Hua Xiao. Did you hear what they said just now? Tell me, how can I still have the face to stay here? I'll make it clear today. In this family I can't live with them and I can't live with them. Gu Nianji threw herself into Hua Xiaoheng's arms again and cried loudly. As she cried, she pinched Hua Xiaoheng's waist. Hua Xiaoheng. Song Jining heard the loud noise outside and didn't know what had happened. She quickly came out and saw two middle-aged women standing in the living room with ugly expressions on their faces. She quickly asked softly, "Who are you? What happened?" Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu had taken care of Song Jining for 7 or 8 years. They knew that she had a habit of not remembering yesterday's events today, so they quickly introduced themselves to her. "Madam, I'm Auntie Xing and this is Auntie Yu." Song Jining frowned. "I'm not married yet. Why are you calling me madam? What are you doing here? Why are you arguing with my guests?" Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu were stunned. They exchanged glances and quickly said, "Madam, we were asked by the eldest daughter to take care of you. May I ask if you had breakfast today?" They had always introduced themselves like this. They introduced themselves every morning, so she was used to it. Song Jining usually didn't ask any more questions at this time. Anyway, she was either in a daze in the bedroom or in the living room every day. They had long gotten used to it and didn't talk to her. They just treated her like an exquisite piece of porcelain. They just needed to take good care of her and didn't need to treat her like a human. However, they didn't expect Song Jining to actually accuse them of arguing with her guests today. Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu were a little embarrassed. They pursed their lips and whispered disdainfully, "Both of you think of yourselves as the masters of this family. It's not even certain if you have the right." They knew that Hua Guanchen and Song Jining had divorced. However, because Hua Guanchen was kind and saw that Song Jining was seriously ill, he didn't let her move out. Actually, when Hua Guanchen remarried and his new wife entered the family, Song Jining would have to leave even if she didn't want to. Therefore, Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu had never really treated Song Jining as the mistress of the family. Hua Xiaoheng looked down at Gu Nianji, who was rubbing in his arms. "What do you want to do?" Gu Nianji gave him a look. "Are you the one in charge of this family?" This was the 2,400 words of the second chapter. Today she could finally ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Especially the recommendation votes on Monday. There was the third chapter at 7 p.m. Chapter 215. You want to kick them out? Hua Xiaoheng expressionlessly picked up a tissue from the dining table to wipe her tears. "You don't have to cry like this, right? I'm not just kicking them out." Gu Nianji wrote Hua Jialan on Hua Xiaoheng's palm. "I also want to take the authority to take care of Mrs. Song from her." Although Song Jining was Hua Xiaoheng's mother, and Hua Xiaoheng should have more say in her matters, Hua Jialan had been responsible for taking care of Song Jining for so many years. Even if she didn't get credit, she still put in a lot of hard work. Hua Jialan's position in the Hua family was rather special, and Gu Nianji probably didn't know about it yet. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it for a while, then said quietly, "We'll talk about this when we get back. Come with me now and take my mother downstairs to the garden. As for those two servants, just tell Jialan to fire them." Gu Nianji blinked her large eyes, sensing that Hua Xiaoheng probably hadn't told her something. "Okay, that's all for today. We'll talk about it when we get back tonight." Gu Nianji nodded and smiled at Hua Xiaoheng. She suddenly reached out to straighten his collar and said sheepishly, "I dirted your shirt, I'll wash it for you when we get back." Her fingers were gentle and slightly cold. They gently glided over Hua Xiaoheng's neck, like a feather brushing against his heart, bringing with it a numbing sensation. After straightening his collar, Gu Nianji turned to leave. Hua Xiaoheng squinted, his hands in his trouser pockets. He looked at Gu Nianji's back, the corners of his lips curling slightly. "Miss Song, let's go get changed. The weather is great today and the plum blossoms in the garden are all in bloom. Let's go enjoy the plum blossoms?" Gu Nianji chattered. She had been crying a moment ago, but now she was completely fine. Song Jining watched Gu Nianji take out a rose-red herringbone dress suit from a Chanel bag. The collar and cuffs were trimmed with white rabbit fur, and she couldn't help sighing. "So pretty. You'll look even prettier in it." Gu Nianji enthusiastically closed the bedroom door. "Come on, hurry and change." Do it now." These are for me? Song Jining was a little confused. Her fingers glided over the rose-red Chanel sheath dress. Her reluctance to part with it was obvious. It's so pretty, then put it on? Gu Nianji smiled, her eyes crinkling. Her words were very moving. Song Jining thought for a while, her cheeks blushing. She lowered her head and muttered, Guanchen likes rosy red. Gu Nianji, what a coincidence. She had thought that Song Jining's skin was as white as cream, and she would look especially charming in rose red, so she had purposely chosen this color. Okay. Let's have a chance encounter in the garden. Maybe we'll meet Guanchen. Gu Nianji resisted the urge to call Song Jining uncle. She didn't want to burden Song Jining even more. She pondered over Song Jining's situation. It was like role-playing. In Song Jining's mind, she was an 18-year-old girl, so Gu Nianji only needed to talk and interact with her as a real 18-year-old girl. Song Jining was indeed moved by Gu Nianji's words and planned to change. However, Gu Nianji crossed her elbows and smiled at her in the mirror. Song Jining felt embarrassed again and stammered, You're not going to wait outside? Miss Song, don't be like this. We're both women. Don't be embarrassed. Gu Nianji winked at her. Here, let me see if the clothes I picked out for you are the right size. Song Jining finally felt relieved. She took off her old-fashioned button-up jacket to reveal the tank top she was wearing underneath. Gu Nianji, fine, although it was a tank top and Song Jining was very thin, her breasts were still quite voluptuous. Of course, they weren't as voluptuous as when she was healthy. It was just that she was too thin, and the butterfly bones on her back could be used as weapons. The collarbone at the bottom of her neck protruded from her shoulders. It was heartbreaking to see. Gu Nianji sighed and walked over to help Song Jining put on the dress. She whispered, Why are you so thin? She had already bought the smallest size, but she hadn't expected it to still not fit well on Song Jining. However, the color did suit her very well. Her milky white skin looked even more beautiful under the rose-red herringbone Chanel suit. Gu Nianji led Song Jining out of the small bedroom and found that Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu were no longer there. Major General Hua? She called out. Hua Xiaoheng walked out of the small kitchen and was stunned when he saw Song Jining dressed up. He hadn't seen Song Jining so energetic in many years. In his memory, his mother had always been pale and lifeless after she got sick. When she looked at people, she was timid and cautious, afraid of offending anyone. Even when she looked at his father, she would secretly look at him. When he asked her to go over and say something, she would be so scared that she would hide far away. But when she thought no one was paying attention, she would peek at Hua Guanchen shyly. Hua Guanchen couldn't get close to Song Jining, not even a step. He could only look at her from a safe distance. Of course, he couldn't force her to live a married life with him. Hua Guanchen used to love Song Jining deeply, but even Hua Xiaoheng couldn't be sure how much of that love remained after the passage of time. Gu Nianji raised her eyebrows at Hua Xiaoheng proudly. Major General Hua, how is it? Can we go down now? Hua Xiaoheng looked at the youthful Gu Nianji, who was wearing a light yellow cashmere jumper and white straight tube custom-made wool pants. He then looked at his mother, Song Jining, who was as elegant and beautiful as a goddess in a rose-red Chanel dress. He smiled and said in a good mood, Okay, let's go together. He led the way and Gu Nianji held Song Jining's arm as they walked downstairs. In the living room of Hua Jialan's suite on the second floor, Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu were blushing as they talked about what had happened on the third floor. They then added fuel to the fire. Miss, you've always been the head of this family. You've worked hard for this family even if you haven't done much. Now you've been slapped in the face by a little vixen who came out of nowhere. You have to stand up for us, we can't let her push her luck. Hua Jialan frowned. She thought the two servants were being too vulgar. If she hadn't used them for so many years, she would have fired them immediately. Okay, I understand. I'll arrange something else for you. Don't worry about Mrs. Song for now. Hua Jialan nodded. Go home and take a break. Come back when they're gone. Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji wouldn't be staying at home for long. Hua Jialan knew this, so she didn't want to have a direct confrontation with Gu Nianji. She still wasn't sure what position Gu Nianji held in Hua Xiaoheng's heart, and how much protection she could receive from him. Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu returned, and Hua Jialan stood alone in front of the living room window. She looked out and saw the garden in the Hua's backyard. There were several plum trees there and they were in full bloom. A young girl in a light yellow jumper and a woman in a rose-red dress were walking towards the plum trees. The tall and steady Hua Xiaoheng walked behind them, his hands in his trouser pockets. His expression was hidden. Just then a custom-made bulletproof car stopped in front of the Hua manor. Hua Guanchen got out of the car and saw Song Jining in a rose-red dress as he passed by the plum forest. She tilted her head and smiled happily at the plum blossoms on the tree. Hua Guanchen hadn't seen Song Jining like this in 16 years. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks, his eyes lingering almost greedily on Song Jining. Wu Jialan saw this from the window on the second floor. She smiled slightly and picked up her phone to make a call. "Andy Bai, are you back from your expedition? You're back? Great, we're having a New Year's party. Can you come?" This was the 2400th word of the third chapter. Today she could finally ask for monthly and recommendation votes for the third chapter. Especially the recommendation votes for Monday. Mwah. Oh, __intersection. Oh. Chapter 216. New Year's reception? The person on the other end of the line seemed to hesitate. "I just got back and have a lot of data to process. I might not have the time." "Really?" Wu Jialan smiled. She changed the direction of her phone and aimed it at the garden downstairs to record a small video. 5 minutes later, Wu Jialan sent the video to the person on the other end of the line. In the video, a handsome middle-aged man in military uniform walked steadily to a blooming plum tree. He smiled at a woman who was looking up at him from under the tree. The woman was wearing a rose-red dress suit. The style was elegant, and made her milky white skin look even more seductive and beautiful. The man said something to the woman and she blushed and nodded lightly. The man reached out and plucked off the most beautiful plum blossom on the tree. He handed it to the woman. The woman took it and smiled at the man. Then she quickly turned around and walked towards the arched door of the garden. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped and leaned against the arched door. She lowered her head and sniffed the plum blossoms. Then she turned around and smiled at the man. The man on the video was Hua Xiaoheng's father, Hua Guanchen, the director of the military's political department. The woman was Song Jining, whom they had not met in a long time. The person on the other end of the line was silent for a long time. After a while, she asked in surprise, "Jining has recovered. When did she recover? Why didn't you tell me about it?" "Anybody, you're wrong. Mrs. Song hasn't recovered." Hua Jialan chuckled, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. "So, are you coming to our New Year's reception?" "There's no need to wait for the New Year's reception. I'll be right there. Jinning's condition seems to have improved greatly. I hope we can continue to work hard and find a way to cure her." The person on the other end of the line hung up. She was very decisive. Hua Jialan glanced at her phone and curled her lips in disdain. She put her phone away and crossed her arms. Her gaze lingered on Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng in the garden downstairs for a moment, then shifted to Gu Nianji, who was standing on her tiptoes behind Hua Xiaoheng, trying to pluck a plum. She watched for a while and guessed that Aunt Bai would be arriving soon. She walked down to the garden on the first floor and interrupted Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng's conversation with a smile. "Second uncle, cousin brother, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something to tell you, especially second uncle." "What is it? Tell me." Hua Guanchen had just returned from a meeting and had yet to change out of his military uniform. He stood under the plum tree, his posture ramrod straight and elegant, but his sideburns were slightly gray. Hua Jialan glanced at Gu Nianji, who was standing behind Hua Xiaoheng, and smiled. "Miss Gu, could you please step aside for a moment?" Gu Nianji turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng gestured to her and Gu Nianji nodded. "Then I'll go see Auntie Song." She walked towards the arched door of the garden. Hua Jialan was speechless. She stared at Gu Nianji's back for a while before turning to Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng. "Aunt Bai just came back from her exam. She heard that Mrs. Song's condition has improved and was very happy. She didn't even want to rest and said she wanted to come see Mrs. Song immediately." Everyone in the Hua family knew who Aunt Bai was. But for the past 12 years, no one had dared to mention Aunt Bai when Hua Xiaoheng was at home. Other than necessary business, Hua Xiaoheng had never spoken to Aunt Bai in private. Hua Guanchen had also never met her at home for the sake of his son's feelings and pride. Wu Jialan knew this but still said it out loud. She said to Hua Xiaoheng, "Cousin brother, I know you've never liked Aunt Bai, but Aunt Bai is here this time because of Mrs. Song's condition. You know, Aunt Bai has been in charge of Mrs. Song's condition all these years. Now that her condition has improved, Aunt Bai was very happy to hear about it. She wants to come see her immediately and try to help Mrs. Song recover as soon as possible." Hua Guanchen was anxious to hear Hua Jialan say this. He desperately wanted Song Jining to recover, but for the past 16 years he had tried everything he could to no avail. When he finally heard from Hua Jialan that Song Jining's condition had improved, he quickly asked, "Jialan, is what you said true? Has your second aunt's condition really improved? I feel much better. Hua Jialan laughed softly. Didn't you just pluck plum blossoms for Mrs. Song? Mrs. Song didn't run away as soon as she saw you again. Does that mean she's getting better? Hua Guanchen was very excited. He nodded repeatedly. It's really different, it's really different. Jialan, thank you. If it weren't for your care all these years. No, it wasn't me. Hua Jialan shook her head. I only started taking care of Mrs. Song 8 years ago. I don't dare take credit. I think Aunt Bai is the one who deserves the most credit. She spoke as she observed Hua Xiaoheng's reaction. Hua Xiaoheng's expression did not change at all, it was frighteningly calm. Since Director Bai wants to come, then come. He turned and walked towards the arched door of the garden. Gu Nianji saw Hua Xiaoheng walk over alone. Although his expression was as calm as ever, his footsteps were slightly hurried. Hua Xiao, what's wrong? Gu Nianji pouted behind him. What's so important that I can't listen in? It's nothing. Hua Xiaoheng said dryly. Bai Jini is coming to treat Mrs. Song. Bai Jini? Gu Nianji suddenly realized. That famous female scientist. She's a doctor? She's not a doctor, but she's a PhD student in psychology. She's been taking care of my mother's condition. Hua Xiaoheng didn't seem to want to talk about it. Let's go in first. Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng walked Song Jining into the house together. As they were about to go upstairs, Gu Nianji called out to Hua Xiaoheng, Hua Xiao, the small suite I stayed in for one night when I first arrived is still empty. Why don't we let Auntie Song stay there? Hua Xiaoheng looked at her questioningly. Why? The attic on the 3rd floor is too low, and Auntie Song's bedroom is too small. Even a healthy person would feel uncomfortable living there, let alone someone like Auntie Song. Gu Nianji told him honestly, I've always hated cramped places. Every time I go in, I feel annoyed like hell. I want to kick up a fuss or get into a fight. Hua Xiaoheng's expression darkened. I'll go up and take a look. You wait here with her. Gu Nianji nodded and watched Hua Xiaoheng's lithe figure disappear around the corner of the stairs. Hua Xiaoheng arrived at Song Jining's small attic suite and went to her bedroom first. Just as Gu Nianji had said, the bedroom was cramped because there were too many things in it. Any normal person would feel uncomfortable looking at it. This bedroom was completely different from the one he had seen 6 years ago. Had something been slowly eroding Song Jining's living space over the past 6 years and preventing her from recovering? Hua Xiaoheng came down from the 3rd floor and immediately ordered his orderlies, decorate a new suite for my mother. Put it on the 1st floor where Nianji used to live. That used to be my mother's room as well. Decorate it as it was. He looked at his watch. I'll give you half an hour. If you can't finish in half an hour, you'll be dealt with according to military law. Yes, sir. Let's go sit in the living room. Hua Xiaoheng led Gu Nianji and Song Jining to the living room and sat down. He reminded Gu Nianji, Bai Jini will be here in a bit. She knows you but she hasn't seen you yet. Gu Nianji grunted and rested her chin on her hand thinking, Bai Jini, is that amazing? She's a famous physicist and psychologist? And she's a psychologist. There's a reason for this, Hua Xiaoheng said briefly. When my mother woke up, she only had memories from before she was 18 years old, and the only people she recognized were Bai Jini and my father. She was closer to Bai Jini so she could get close to her but no one else could. It was just like when Gu Nianji had first escaped from a car accident and was too shocked. But Gu Nianji only recognized Hua Xiaoheng and no one else. This was the first 2,400-word update. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. I just saw my friends off today and am exhausted. I'll update at 7 p.m. and I'll update again tomorrow. Chapter 217. Gu Nianji was silent. She knew what it was like so she didn't comment on it for now. Song Jining watched curiously as Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng exchanged questions and answers. She was confused but when she heard a familiar name, Bai Jini, she immediately said, Jini is my classmate. She's very smart and capable and can take a lot of hardship. Gu Nianji, she looked at Hua Xiaoheng and raised her eyebrows. She asked silently, Really? Hua Xiaoheng sat calmly on the sofa looking non-committal. Every time he showed this expression, Gu Nianji knew he didn't want to admit it, but couldn't deny it either. Got it? Gu Nianji quietly pursed her red lips and pouted. Her eyes wandered and her face blushed. Hua Xiaoheng? He could only look away expressionlessly towards the door. At that moment 3 people walked in. It was Hua Guanchen, Hua Jialan, and a tall, skinny woman with honey-colored skin. However, it was obvious that this woman was a bit older. She had deep crow's feet at the corners of her eyes, and her features were elegant. She had a similar angle to the beautiful Bai Yueran, but of course she was much older. Gu Nianji knew that this person had to be the famous physicist Bai Jini. Born into the Bai family, she was knowledgeable, and had her own career instead of relying on the family's wealth. From this perspective, Gu Nianji admired her. However, when Huo Xiaoheng said she was the one who took care of Song Jinning's illness, Gu Nianji felt a bit strange. Song Jinning's illness required a professional psychologist to take care of her 24/7, to say nothing of anything else. As a female scientist, Bai Jini was said to be a workaholic. How did she find time to take care of Song Jinning? Gu Nianji remembered when she had just escaped from the car accident. Qin Lai had been monitoring and treating her almost 24/7 with Huo Xiaoheng present, of course. This situation lasted for 3 months before Gu Nianji gradually recovered from the uncontrollable state of shock. After that, Qin Lai monitored her condition 12 hours a day. This continued for a year before Gu Nianji fully recovered. Gu Nianji really wanted to know how Bai Jini spent her time. The three of them walked in and Huo Xiaoheng slowly stood up from the sofa. Gu Nianji also stood up with a timid Song Jinning by her side. The elderly woman with honey-colored skin was indeed Bai Jini. As soon as she came in, her eyes stopped on Song Jinning. "Jinning, do you still remember me?" "I'm Jini." She quickly walked up to Song Jinning and introduced herself with a smile. Song Jinning remembered the name Jini, and her face. She looked at the woman in front of her and asked, "Are you Jini? Why have you aged so much? Look at the crow's feet on your face, the bags under your eyes, the spots. Oh my God, there are even wrinkles at the corners of your mouth? No way. Are you really Jini?" Bai Jini looked like she had been punched in the face. Oh, Gu Nianji couldn't help it. She quickly turned her head away and laughed in the direction of the sofa. Bai Jini's gaze finally shifted to Gu Nianji. "This is," Huo Xiaoheng replied dryly, "Gu Nianji." "It's her?" Bai Jini's expression was lively. Although she was old, she still had the vigor of a young person. How did she grow up to look like this? "Are you sure?" Bai Jini had been one of the people at the scene of Gu Nianji's car accident when she was 12. She had seen Gu Nianji when Huo Xiaoheng had rescued her from the burning car. The chubby little girl had slender eyebrows and a chubby little face. Now that she had grown up, her features were completely developed. She was completely different from the little girl she used to be. "She's always been by my side from 12 to 18. Huo Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets. "What does Director Bai mean?" Gu Nianji was very angry when she heard this and couldn't help but say, "Mr. Hua, I think Physicist Bai is suspicious of the Special Operations Force's ability. She thinks that someone can replace a living person right under your nose." Bai Jini looked at Gu Nianji in shock and shook her head in disapproval. She said to Huo Xiaoheng, "Huo Xiao, didn't you raise her properly? What's the meaning of talking back to an elder in public?" Huo Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He only cocked his head to look at Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji received Huo Xiaoheng's encouraging look and stood up straighter. She could have been unreasonable, but she was afraid of Huo Xiaoheng and was afraid he would punish her. Now that Huo Xiaoheng was supporting her, she was even more unforgiving. Gu Nianji took a step forward and looked Bai Jini up and down. "May I ask your name?" "Bai, what's wrong? Didn't you just say I was Physicist Bai? How did you forget my surname in the blink of an eye?" Bai Jini was getting impatient. She had come to the Huo family for Song Jinning's illness, not to bicker with a little girl who was still wet behind the ears. She didn't expect Gu Nianji to be so persistent. She clapped her hands and laughed. "So you know your surname is Bai? Then why are you my elder? Why can't I be your elder?" Bai Jini didn't like girls like Gu Nianji, who were as pretty as a comic book girl. She thought they weren't dignified, so she didn't treat Gu Nianji nicely. "Your surname is neither Gu nor Hua, so what right do you have to be my elder? Who gave you the right to flaunt your seniority in front of me?" Gu Nianji retorted mercilessly. "You." Bai Jini took a step back, hurt by Gu Nianji's words. She tilted her head to look at Huo Guanchen and didn't say anything else. Huo Jialan had been watching the drama unfold from the side with her arms crossed. She chuckled and came to Bai Jini's rescue. "Any Bai, don't be angry. Little Gu has only been here for a few days and doesn't know your position in the family. Ignorance is not a crime." She glanced sideways at Huo Xiaoheng as she spoke. Huo Xiaoheng looked down at the ground. He didn't bother to explain or stop Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji was even less afraid. She asked Huo Jialan bluntly, "Auntie Lan, may I ask if Physicist Bai is a relative of the Huo family?" Not yet." Huo Jialan could only look at her second uncle, Huo Guanchen. Huo Guanchen frowned. "That's enough, don't talk nonsense. Jini, didn't you say you wanted to see Jinning's illness?" Yes, Gunyanji was being unreasonable just now. I was so angry I lost my mind. Bai Jini laughed heartily and extended her hand to Song Jining. Come Jining, come with me. I'll give you a good evaluation. Song Jining looked at her hesitantly. She didn't extend her hand. She only muttered to herself. How did Genie become like this? Are you really Genie? Gunyanji giggled and held Song Jining's arm. Mrs. Song, I'll go with you. Don't be afraid. She also wanted to see how Bai Jini would treat Song Jining. However, Bai Jini frowned and didn't allow her to go. Gunyanji, Mrs. Song isn't used to being close to others. You should let her go. I'd like to see what you're going to do if she gets sick. Also, I don't need outsiders around when I treat her. Really? Gunyanji drawled. Physicist Bai, I know you're a famous physicist. But I didn't know you were also a psychologist. Do you have a license to practice psychiatry? Little Gu, Aunt Bai has a PhD in psychology from a famous school. She's more than qualified to be a psychologist, right? Wu Jialan spoke up to help Bai Jini out. She urged, Aunt Bai, don't waste time. Hurry up and go. Wait. Gunyanji didn't allow them to leave. She said to Hu Jialan bluntly, Aunt Lan, I can tell you're legally illiterate. What did you study in university? Did you take basic law courses? It's a compulsory course in many schools. The corners of Hu Jialan's mouth twitched. She tried her best to maintain her composure. I studied at Yale. I've never heard of the basic law course you mentioned. Oh, no wonder you're illiterate. Gunyanji didn't seem to care about the word Yale at all. This made Hu Jialan feel very awkward. She smiled. I graduated from Yale. You're saying I'm illiterate? Gunyanji wanted to roll on the floor with laughter. Who would dare to argue with her? Was he tired of living? Was he tired of living? You graduated from Yale. That has nothing to do with you being illiterate. Gunyanji waggled her slender fingers. Illiterates are people who don't know the law. Do you know the law just because you graduated from Yale? May I ask, did you study law at Yale? Hu Jialan was speechless. Of course she didn't study law. She studied art appreciation. It was actually an online correspondence course from the Yale Adult Education Institute. She had to take care of Song Jining. In the end, she gave up the opportunity to study abroad. In the end, she could only study online correspondence courses from famous foreign schools. Gunyanji saw that Hu Jialan didn't speak for a long time. She knew for sure that Hu Jialan didn't study law. Otherwise she would have jumped up to refute her. Fine, don't argue with me. Gunyanji patted Hu Jialan's shoulder graciously. She turned to Bai Jini. Physicist Bai, if you're going to conduct a psychological evaluation on Mrs. Song, I request to be present. That's not appropriate, is it? Jining isn't used to having outsiders around. She'll get scared and panic. Bai Jini's frown deepened. I've been the one to give her psychological treatment all this time. Is that so? Then how often do you conduct psychological treatment on Mrs. Song? Do you keep her medical records? Gunyanji was very familiar with psychiatrists. She had studied the subject herself. Moreover, she was a law student. She had checked the legislation in this area several times. Bai Jini suppressed her impatience and explained to Gunyanji. Of course the medical records are kept. As for how often I treat her, you know that I'm very busy. I have a major national research project and close cooperation with the military. So the time I can give Jining is limited. But as long as I have time, I don't care if I don't eat or drink. I'll take care of her and treat her first. Yes, Aunt Bai is very responsible. Otherwise Mrs. Song wouldn't be getting better. Hu Jialan snapped out of her daze and stopped arguing with Gunyanji. She only spoke up for Bai Jini. Bai Jini nodded. Jialan, you flatter me. It's my duty. Jining's father is also my tutor and Jining is my classmate. I can't just leave her be. The two of them echoed each other. Gunyanji thought about it and said, Physicist Bai, it seems like you're also ignorant of the law, so I'll explain it to you. According to the relevant laws, Mrs. Song is a person without legal capacity. Therefore, when she's undergoing psychological treatment, a family member or an independent third party must be present to conduct psychological treatment. Gunyanji paused and shook her head. She said bitterly, but you've been treating Mrs. Song alone for so many years. You're already breaking the law, don't you know that? Hu Xiaoheng, Hu Guanchen, Hu Jialan. Bai Jini suddenly felt a headache coming on. She said dryly, it's an emergency. Jining's illness is confidential, so it's possible to do it without a third party present. Gunyanji wagged her finger. I'm not sure if this will work, I'll have to go back and look up the legal provisions. She then asked, Physicist Bai, may I ask if you're qualified to practice as a psychologist? Aunt Bai is already a PhD student in psychology from a prestigious university. Why can't you be a minor psychologist? He Jialan expressed her disagreement with Gu Nianji's accusation. Gu Nianji didn't even look at He Jialan. She said dryly, Aunt Lan, those who are ignorant of the law will be taught a lesson by the law at any time. If you don't want to taste the feeling of being sued, then you'd better stop talking nonsense. He Jialan's face turned purple from anger at Gu Nianji's words. She breathed heavily, and her expression was almost ferocious. So physicist Bai, you're not qualified to practice as a psychologist, are you? Gu Nianji shook her head regretfully. This time she looked at He Guanchen. It's a pity that Auntie Song's illness was delayed for 16 years. If you had found a proper psychiatrist and given enough time for treatment, Auntie Song's illness might have been cured a long time ago. He Guanchen was moved for a moment, but when he saw Bai Jini's embarrassed expression, her usually strong and optimistic face was suddenly filled with sadness, he couldn't bear to see it. He explained to Gu Nianji, it can't be helped. Back then Jining only acknowledged Jini and no one else could get close to her. Up until now she only trusts Jini. Is that so? Gu Nianji smiled. Uncle Hua, Auntie Song has actually changed a lot. Have you noticed? Changed? Yes. You see, Auntie Song used to only allow physicist Bai to get close to her. That was because she had no choice and had to trouble physicist Bai to take the time out of her busy schedule to treat her. The fact that Auntie Song's illness hasn't worsened already proves that physicist Bai has some skills, so I won't pursue this matter any further. Gu Nianji walked to Song Jinning's side and held her arm. Song Jinning turned to smile at her. Gu Nianji looked up at He Guanchen. But Uncle Hua, you see, the situation has changed. Auntie Song has actually been allowing people to get close to her for a long time now. Haven't you noticed? Those servants are all close to her. Of course, she and He Xiaoheng were still able to get close to Song Jinning. Actually, Song Jinning had been able to allow people to get close to her. Even He Guanchen had approached her today and given her a plum blossom. Although these changes were minor, it was already a very important improvement for Song Jinning, who had been like this for 16 years. Bai Jini finally said, Yes, I heard about the changes in Jinning, that's why I rushed over. As she spoke, she sincerely apologized to He Guanchen, her tone affectionate. Guanchen, it's all my fault. I've been too busy these past few years and haven't taken more time to treat Jinning. This time I'm back, I plan to stay for a few more months. I'll live with Jinning and see the treatment through to the end. Gu Nianji hadn't been biased against Bai Jini in the beginning. Everything she said was based on objective facts. It wasn't until she heard Bai Jini apologize to He Guanchen and affectionately call him Guanchen, that Gu Nianji finally understood. Oh my god. Could this famous physicist be the woman who had helped He Guanchen with his personal needs? Was this the girlfriend that He Xiaoheng had mentioned? Gu Nianji's eyes widened. She looked at Bai Jini, then at He Xiaoheng. She tugged at the corner of his shirt and pouted at Bai Jini. He Xiaoheng looked down and met Gu Nianji's large, clear eyes. He closed his eyes slightly to indicate that it was exactly what she was thinking. This was the second installment of 4,500 words. It was an additional installment of the immortal fate awarded by Alliance leader Jiu in August. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 218. Gu Nianji had originally thought that she had already learned a little of his general's composure from following He Xiaoheng. Ordinary things could no longer make her fuss. The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched when she confirmed Bai Jini's other identity. Damn it. Letting their love rival treat them, why didn't this family go to heaven? However, now that things had developed to such an unbelievable stage, Gu Nianji was no longer as agitated as before. She looked at He Xiaoheng's calm expression and calmed herself down. The Hua family was not an ordinary family. Grandfather Hua, He Xuanong, and He Xiaoheng's father, He Guanchen, were all high-ranking people in the military. Such a person would never make such a low-level mistake. As Song Jinning's biological son, it was strange that He Xiaoheng was indifferent to this matter. Of course, Gu Nianji didn't think He Xiaoheng was wrong. In her heart, He Xiaoheng was always right no matter what he did. If someone thought that He Xiaoheng was wrong, Gu Nianji would think that there was something wrong with that person's IQ and vision. That person should go to the hospital for a neurological and ophthalmological examination. So, was there any inside story that she didn't know? Gu Nianji recalled that He Xiaoheng had said that he would tell her the specifics of the situation that night. She hadn't expected Bai Jini to arrive before nightfall. What could he do? Gu Nianji's mind raced, but she still decided that the most urgent task at hand was to isolate Bai Jini and Hu Jialan from Song Jining. No matter what reason she didn't know, it shouldn't be a problem to get Song Jining out of their control. Gu Nianji made up her mind and coughed. Physicist Bai? Bai Jini was looking at Huo Guanchen helplessly. Her lips were parted and her face was gloomy. Compared to Song Jining, she was indeed a far cry in terms of beauty. Is there anything else? Bai Jini looked away from Huo Guanchen to Gu Nianji. I'm very busy. I know Physicist Bai must be very busy. You're the chief scientist, so your time is limited. Mrs. Song's treatment is also urgent, so I don't think we should bother you anymore. Gu Nianji cocked her head and smiled. Let's get another psychiatrist. I'm not busy these days. I told you I can take a few months to live with Jining and focus on her treatment. Bai Jini looked away. She didn't want to talk to Gu Nianji anymore. She looked at Huo Guanchen. Guanchen, what do you think? When can I move in? Huo Guanchen nodded. Anytime. Huo Jialan smiled happily and clasped her hands together. Aunt Bai, did you bring your things? It doesn't matter if you didn't bring it. We have everything at home. Even if we don't, you can make a list of the things you usually use and I'll send someone to buy them. Gu Nianji's eyes widened. She looked at Huo Guanchen, then at the silent Huo Xiaoheng. She began to panic. What's wrong with these men? Did they really think that Bai Jini would have no problem treating Song Jining? Gu Nianji was so anxious that she didn't notice the look Huo Xiaoheng was giving her. She walked over to take Song Jining's arm and complained to Huo Guanchen. Uncle Hua, with Physicist Bai's special relationship with you, she's not suitable to be Auntie Song's psychiatrist. She needs to stay out of trouble. Avoid suspicion? Avoid arousing suspicion? Huo Jialan pulled her violet Peruvian wool shawl tighter around her. What are you hinting at? Stop hemming and hawing. No one here is an outsider other than you. Make yourself clear. Gu Nianji was infuriated by Huo Jialan's sarcastic words. What did she mean by no one here was an outsider other than her? Miss Hua, I've made myself very clear. Physicist Bai is Uncle Hua's current girlfriend. How can you let your current girlfriend treat your ex-wife? Aren't you afraid of people laughing at you? Gu Nianji carefully studied Song Jining's expression as she spoke. She saw that Song Jining had a strange expression on her face. She wasn't the least bit interested in what everyone was saying. Could it be that she didn't know what everyone was talking about? Gu Nianji was speechless. Huo Jialan had been waiting for Gu Nianji to say this. She wiped her smile and said sarcastically, Aunt Bai is a noble and decent person. How can you think of her like that? Also, when Aunt Bai was with my second uncle was already divorced. There's someone else who's taking his place. If that's your concern, Miss Gu, then I think you're overthinking it. I'm not that despicable to purposely make things difficult for a mentally ill person. Yes, I've been busy with work these past few years. I've been neglectful, so I want to make it up to you. Bai Jini also understood what Gu Nianji was implying. Huo Jialan also praised Bai Jini. Miss Gu, you don't know how much effort Aunt Bai had to put in to help Mrs. Song recover from her hysterical state. You'd be scared to death if I told you what happened. Only Aunt Bai had the ability, patience and qualifications to approach Mrs. Song. Only then did my family and the military trust her to take care of Mrs. Song. Gu Nianji felt uneasy as Huo Jialan and Bai Jini became more and more confident. However, she didn't give up. Huo Xiaoheng didn't say anything to stop her, so she continued, Yes, I'm not denying Physicist Bai's ability. But it's been 16 years and Mrs. Song still hasn't recovered. Why can't she get someone else to look at her? People have to compare prices to buy things, much less treat illnesses. But Mrs. Song's illness is related to the military's top-secret experiment. To prevent leaks, normal people can't even approach Mrs. Song. If you want to find another doctor to treat Mrs. Song, please apply to the military first. She can only be treated after the military's background check is over. I don't know how many years it'll take before the background check is over. Huo Jialan's objection was watertight. Her eyes flashed with pride as she looked at Gu Nianji like she was watching a child throwing a tantrum. Because psychotherapy always involves hypnosis. If it's an unreliable person, what if the hypnosis reveals top-secret information? So we can't be careless. I was also part of that lab. Although I wasn't directly involved in the experiment, I know all aspects of it. That's why the military finally decided to let me take over the treatment. Bai Jini also recovered from her shock and began to explain amiably to Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji felt like she had fallen into a net. Huo Jialan and Bai Jini stood on top of it, watching her torment coldly. However, she was never one to be defeated with a few words. Gu Nianji retorted without hesitation. Actually, you can also find a military doctor. For example, the national miracle doctor, Chen Lai. You all know about him, right? Can't we let him try? He's a soldier and his security clearance is very high. If he takes over, there's no way he won't leak anything, right? Gu Nianji spread her hands and used her ultimate trump card, closed the door and let Chen Lai go. Hua Jialan still disagreed. Chen Lai is indeed known as the national miracle doctor, but I've never heard of him dabbling in psychology, and has no experience as a psychologist. Aunt Bai, on the other hand, has 16 years of experience. Gu Nianji raised a brow and insisted, who said Chen Lai has no experience? She was about to explain her own situation, but Hua Xiaoheng spoke up before she could. As long as the military agrees, of course we can let Chen Lai try. But as far as I know, Chen Lai is a bit busy. I don't know if he has the time. Hua Jialan, Bai Jini and Hua Guanchen were all surprised that Hua Xiaoheng actually agreed with Gu Nianji. Bai Jini and Hua Guanchen looked at each other but did not speak. Hua Jialan was still unwilling. She gritted her teeth and said angrily, Miss Gu is being ridiculous. Cousin brother, how could you let her do as she pleases? She stared at Hua Xiaoheng as she spoke. Cousin brother, don't forget my father was also in the lab at the time. But there was an accident in the lab, and the military told me and my mother that my father was missing. Hua Jialan pointed at Song Jining who was beside Gu Nianji and said, only her. Only she knows what happened in the lab at the time. They want to take her away? I won't allow it. My father's whereabouts still depend on her. This was the 2,400-word first chapter. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today's second and third chapters were 2 chapters in one, and would be released at 7 p.m. Because she had read the outline, she thought it was better to publish it all at once, lest her friends say that she was missing chapters again. Chapter 219. Hua Xiaoheng quietly glanced in the direction Hua Jialan was pointing and saw that Gu Nianji was still confused. He couldn't bear it anymore and was about to call her over when Gu Nianji retorted again. Faced with this sudden turn of events, Gu Nianji suddenly understood why she had been feeling so uneasy all this time. It was Hua Jialan's parents. Logically speaking, Hua Jialan's father was the eldest son of the Hua family, and her mother was the eldest daughter-in-law. They were close relatives, but she had been here for 2 days and had yet to hear anyone mention them. Even Hua Jialan had not said anything about her parents to her. Today was the first time she had heard Hua Jialan mention her own father. Gu Nianji instinctively clapped her hands and said solemnly, that's even better. Miss Hua, we have the same goal, and that is to cure Mrs. Song as soon as possible. That way you can find your father's whereabouts as soon as possible, don't you agree? This counterattack was truly watertight. Even grandfather Hua, who had been watching from the stairs, nodded slightly but quickly shook his head. After all, she wasn't a member of the Hua family, so it was obvious that she knew nothing about the Hua family. But this also showed that Hua Xiaoheng was a person who kept his work and business separate. He still treated Gu Nianji as his mission and work. Although he had raised her for 6 years, Hua Xiaoheng had never mentioned a word to her about the Hua family. Of course, grandfather Hua would never have guessed that it wasn't that Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to mention it, but that he didn't have the opportunity to. He had originally planned to tell Gu Nianji everything about the Hua family that night, but plans couldn't keep up with the changes. Everything had happened ahead of schedule. Of course, to Hua Xiaoheng this situation was nothing. He had faced situations that were thousands of times more dangerous than this. Being able to adapt to changing circumstances was one of the most important criteria for the Special Operations Forces to evaluate the abilities of their members. And if Nianji wanted to follow him, she would have to get used to these kinds of unexpected situations. Hua Xiaoheng remained expressionless as he watched the situation unfold with his hands behind his back. Although Hua Jialan was older than Gu Nianji, she obviously didn't have Gu Nianji's ability and intelligence to adapt to changing circumstances. She was flabbergasted as she listened to Gu Nianji twist this matter into a good thing and take Song Jining away from under her nose. How could this be? Hua Jialan could not accept this outcome at all. She looked around the living room and saw her grandfather, Hua Xuanong, standing on the stairs to the 3rd floor. Uncle and Aunt Zhang's family stood on the stairs to the 2nd floor. Their daughter Zhang Wenna and son Zhang Wenjia were also looking towards the living room anxiously. She turned to look at her second uncle, Hua Guanchen. He seemed to be tempted as well. As for Aunt Bai, her eyes were deep and serene, looking at her with pity and sympathy. Bai Jini's gaze was the straw that broke the camel's back. Hua Jialan trembled all over and could no longer pretend. She thought of her mother lying in the bedroom with a pale face, and her face changed rapidly. One moment it was dazzlingly red, the next moment it was frighteningly white, and finally she broke down. Huajialan wailed and pointed at Song Jining, who was standing next to Gunyanji. She yelled at Gunyanji, "I won't let you take her. You're not allowed to take that slut away. Do you know that my mother committed suicide by swallowing sleeping pills because of her? What right did she have to pretend to be crazy after doing all those shameless things? Wasn't she crazy? Did he lose his memory? I'll make her crazy for the rest of her life. Lose her memory for the rest of her life. I'll make it up to my mother." Gunyanji suddenly felt like her heart was on a tightrope. She couldn't go up, couldn't go down, and even felt dizzy for a moment. This was very different from what she had expected. Had she been wrong? She looked at Hua Xiaoheng pleadingly, but he continued to stare back at her expressionlessly. He had no intention of speaking. Huajialan collapsed into Baijini's arms. She cried so hard that her entire body shook. "I know. I knew it 10 years ago. My father didn't go missing at all. You're all lying to me and my mother. In order to protect that bitch's life, he died without even leaving a corpse behind." That's enough. Gunyanji couldn't take it anymore. Since no one was speaking up for Song Jining, then she would. She was an outsider anyway, so she might as well speak a few words of justice. "Huajialan, speak nicely. Swearing won't make you more reasonable. It'll only make people hate you." Huajialan choked on her words. She coughed violently. Baijini quickly patted her back and shook her head at Gunyanji. "Gunyanji, I didn't expect you to have such a sharp tongue. Don't you know that her mother's suicide was a lifelong pain for Jialan? How could you rub salt into her wound?" Gunyanji took a deep breath to calm herself down. She said calmly, "I didn't know that Huajialan's mother committed suicide. I only know that it's wrong for her to address Mrs. Song like that." "Mrs. Song? You're still calling her Mrs. Song?" Huajialan looked up from Baijini's arms. She looked at Gunyanji with tears streaming down her face. "Wait here, I'll show you something." She pushed Baijini away and sprinted to her room on the second floor. The Zhang family on the second floor stared at her in shock. They didn't even blink. Huajialan rushed into her suite and came out not long after. She was holding a stack of old and yellowed envelopes in her hands. The envelope at the top was relatively new and seemed to be well preserved. "Gunyanji, are you ready? Do you want to see what's going on?" Huajialan took the stack of envelopes and looked at Hua Xiaoheng's face. He was still expressionless and stood behind Gunyanji. Huajialan was slightly embarrassed. No wonder they said a man's heart was as hard as steel. Her cousin had been in the army for more than a decade. Did he have a heart of stone? Or did he not have a heart or feelings at all? His mother's scandal was about to be exposed to the public, but he didn't do anything. Huajialan almost lost her temper at the thought. "You don't even care about your mother's scandal, why should I cover it up for you? I'll let everyone know that bitch's true colors." Gunyanji stared at the envelope in Huajialan's hand and looked up at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He didn't try to stop or encourage her. He just stood there calmly as if none of this had anything to do with him. Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat. Did Hua Xiaoheng have something against his mother? Without another word, she took the stack of envelopes from Huajialan and tilted her head. "Then let me see what's so great about the inside story." She pulled out the top envelope that had been well preserved. Opening the seal, she found only a piece of floral note with 2 sentences written on it. "Tears fall from the eyes of a pearl. I regret not meeting you before we were married." It was signed in beautiful, small script, Jining. Gunyanji's expression changed. She clutched the rest of the envelopes like they were a ball of fire. "What's wrong? Are you scared?" Huajialan snickered. She stretched out her arms and twirled around the living room like she was dancing ballet. "Look, the truth can't be contained. Whatever's going to come out will come out." Gunyanji looked at Hua Xiaoheng again, but this time he looked away. His expression was calm, and even his Adam's apple bobbing up and down was normal. It was clear that Hua Xiaoheng's well-hidden self-restraint had gone up another level. Gunyanji's heart calmed down. She pulled out a few pieces of paper from the rest of the envelopes and looked at them. They were love letters signed Hua Guanyuan. Hua Xiaoheng's father's name was Hua Guanchen, so this Hua Guanyuan? Huajialan saw Gunyanji staring at the autograph in a daze and couldn't help snickering. "Yes, Hua Guanyuan. That's my dear father. Ah. I just hope he burns these shameful letters before he dies. That way my mother won't find them after he's gone." Gunyanji looked at Huajialan and frowned. "Your mother found them?" "Yes." Jialan's mother was originally a very strong woman. After discovering these letters, she didn't tell anyone and endured it in silence. When she couldn't take it anymore, she swallowed sleeping pills and committed suicide. Bai Jini sighed. That was 10 years ago. It was that year that Hua Jialan came home from school to find her mother lying motionless on the bed, and a suicide note her mother had left behind. Although her mother had asked her to burn the letters in her mother's will, Hua Jialan refused. Her home had been destroyed and both her parents were gone because of that woman. She wasn't going to swallow her anger and end up suffering from depression like her mother. She chose to show grandfather Hua and Hua Guanchen, as well as Hua Xiaoheng, who had just started his second year at the time. Do you know what she was like before she became ill? She was a slut who used her beauty to attract attention everywhere. Otherwise, why would my father die for her? She looks normal to you now, but what was she like before? You're the only one who doesn't know, right? If it wasn't for Aunt Bai, she would have been locked up in a mental hospital for electroshock therapy. She's much better now than before she became mentally ill. I'm just letting her continue to lose her memory, and providing for her to eat and drink well. Everyone doesn't have to worry, so what are you unhappy about? What does it have to do with you? Hua Jialan felt that she had the upper hand, and every word she said was mean to Gun Yanji. Gun Yanji hadn't expected to get into such a big mess, and her palms went cold. She looked at Hua Xiaoheng helplessly. Hua Xiaoheng's expression was stern, but he didn't deny it. He looked at her calmly, then away. Was it because there were so many secrets that Hua Xiaoheng was hesitant to speak? No wonder he felt so conflicted every time he saw Song Jining. Although he didn't stop himself from approaching her, he always watched her from behind. They weren't completely unaware of what happened all those years ago, right? She thought about Hua Guanchen's divorce, but he still kept Song Jining, who had already lost her memory, by his side. How much of the inside story was not known to outsiders? No wonder Hua Xiaoheng decided to leave home to join the army, and didn't return for so many years, nor did he interfere with his elders' affairs. Bai Jini looked at Hua Guanchen's gloomy face and sighed. Hua Jialan pointed at Song Jining, her heart filled with glee. She said to Gun Yanji, "Do you know when your Mrs. Song changed from Mrs. Hua to Mrs. Song? It was that year that second uncle read these letters and decided to file for divorce. At the time, the written reason for filing for divorce was that Song Jining was mentally ill and unfit for married life. Of course, he wouldn't say that the real reason was because his wife was in a relationship with his older brother." Gun Yanji remembered Hua Xiaoheng's hesitation when he mentioned his mother, Song Jining. No wonder he wanted to find a special time to tell her. The inside story really wasn't something that outsiders should know. If Bai Jini hadn't rushed over today, wouldn't she have heard the whole story from Hua Xiaoheng first? She wouldn't have been so shocked. Fortunately, she was able to cope with it. Gun Yanji sneaked another glance at Hua Xiaoheng, her eyes lingering on his face. This was one of the main reasons Hua Xiaoheng decided to join the army 10 years ago, wasn't it? His home was foreign and suffocating, and he really didn't want to go home again. After joining the army, he rushed to do all kinds of missions as long as he didn't have to go home. Because he couldn't go home to face his family. It took him 10 years to gain the tranquility and strength of his heart, allowing him to stay out of the matter and look at it without any emotions. Gun Yanji tried to figure out Hua Xiaoheng's feelings and felt terrible. She couldn't help but feel that things might turn for the better. Song Jining was still crazy and Hua Guanyuan was missing. Who knew what had happened? Hua Xiaoheng walked over and took the letters from Gun Yanji's hands. He said calmly to Hua Jialan, "I'll put these away for now. My mother will be sent away for now. Don't worry, we'll give you an explanation." He turned around and called, "Orderly?" The head orderly on duty that day ran over. "Hello, Chief. Call my personal secretary and have them bring Chen Lai and Dr. Yi over to take my mother to the 6th Military Region's headquarters." Hua Xiaoheng ordered in an orderly manner. His deep and magnetic voice had the calmness and composure that made the final decision. Gun Yanji's heart immediately found a place to return to, and was no longer swaying like she was walking on a tightrope. "You still want to take her away?" Hua Jialan's body swayed and she couldn't control her grief. "Cousin brother, how can you be so cruel? Your mother's life is a life, but my parents' lives are not." Gun Yanji couldn't take it anymore and raised her voice. "Hua Jialan, don't go too far. How can you ask Hua Xiao to agree to your unreasonable demands? No matter what, Mrs. Song is still sick, and it's too early to tell what the truth is." "What do you mean it's too early?" Hua Jialan rushed to Gun Yanji's side with a fierce expression. "Don't you believe these things? I'm telling you, grandfather and second uncle took these letters to the best handwriting experts in the military, and they confirmed that they're my father and his mother's handwriting." "So what?" Gun Yanji wasn't afraid at all. He Jichu had once praised Gun Yanji, saying that she had the indomitable spirit that a lawyer needed. Even when the evidence was conclusive, she didn't give up and attacked the opponent's weakness. She didn't disappoint Hijichu and retorted to Huojialan again, "Huojialan, I think both you and your mother are a bit stupid. You're using a few yellowed letters to convict your own family for being absent. You should at least wait for your father to be found, and for Mrs. Song to wake up before we confront each other in court, okay? You're delaying Mrs. Song's illness like this, aren't you just helping the enemy?" This was a large chapter of 4,000 words, consisting of the second and third chapters of the Guanghan Palace Mistress A's first additional chapter in August. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 220. Huojialan took a few steps back from Gunyenji's incisive question. She couldn't help but be taken aback. Bai Jini saw this and shook her head in disapproval. She said to Huo Guanchen, "Guanchen, Jinning has finally improved. Are you going to give up now?" "If I give up now, I don't know how many years I'll have to wait." Huo Guanchen pursed his lips tightly and looked at Huo Xiaoheng with a livid expression. He said sternly, "What do you want to do? Hurry up and take your mother upstairs. Don't listen to the nonsense of idle people." This miscellaneous person was, of course, referring to Gunyenji. Gunyenji's mind raced. Just as she was thinking about how to convince Huo Guanchen, she heard Huo Xiaoheng say calmly, "Nianji's opinion is my opinion. I'm going to take her for treatment." "Nonsense. I won't allow it." Huo Guanchen stood in front of Huo Xiaoheng. From the back, the father and son looked about the same size, but Huo Xiaoheng was taller, more robust, and younger. "You won't allow it? Why can't you allow it?" Huo Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets. His posture was relaxed, but his aura was no less imposing than his father, Huo Guanchen. "You've already divorced her, so you have no right to interfere with her decision. I'm her son and a major general of the 6th Military Region. Whether it's official or private, I have the right and authority to take her away. As for you, take care." Huo Guanchen's hands trembled. You. How dare you? In the past, I couldn't go against your decisions. You could make decisions for me. But now I can't. It's not about whether I dare or not, it's about whether I want to or not, Huo Xiaoheng said calmly. Huo Guanchen's face turned purple. Although a father should be happy that his son was successful, the feeling of being surpassed and even stepped on by his son was too hard to accept. Bai Jini hurriedly advised, "Both of you should take a step back." She then said to Huo Xiaoheng, "Xiaoheng, your father has high blood pressure, he can't be agitated. Your mother is very important to the military's experimental plan, and she is so sick. If you take her away now and something happens to her, your future will be ruined." Gunyenji understood what he was getting at. Bai Jini was threatening Huo Xiaoheng with her future. Of course, Gunyenji wouldn't let Bai Jini have her way. This old woman was really too idle. Not only did she steal someone else's husband, but she even meddled in other people's family affairs. "I really need to find something for her to do." Gunyenji rolled her eyes and said coldly to Bai Jini, "Physicist Bai, you should worry about yourself first." She paused. When everyone in the living room had their eyes on her, she slowly and clearly said, "I've decided to sue Bai Jini for practicing medicine without a license, causing a patient's condition to worsen, as well as intentional assault, attempted murder, and breaking up a military marriage. Just wait for the court summons." She wanted to make the accusation as big as possible so that it would have a deterrent effect. Otherwise, this physicist would think that she was Einstein who could cover the sky with one hand. Bai Jini didn't think much of Gunyenji. She pursed her lips into a smile. "Little girl, everyone can talk big. Don't blow your own trumpet. Who knows who will be the one to be embarrassed when the time comes. If you want to sue me, go online and find out what the Bai family does." "There's no need to go online now, I've already done it." Gunyenji held Song Jining even tighter and glanced at Bai Jini. "The Bai family does have a lot of old in-laws. I even drew a family map. TSK, how intricate. I can guarantee that when I sue you in court, I'll personally go online and report the Bai family for attempting to use their family connections to obstruct justice. When that time comes, you'll have to bear the wrath of the common people." For these aristocratic families, there were many things that could not be brought to the surface. Anything that attracted the attention of society was the time when the internal relationships of families like theirs became dysfunctional. When the time comes, the Bai family will lose a pawn to save a rook. You'll be the unfortunate pawn. Gunyenji raised an eyebrow with a smile on her face. She gestured with her right hand like a pistol and made a Bayu gesture at Bai Jini to shoot. Bai Jini's expression changed several times in an instant. It had to be said that Gunyenji was a genius when it came to bewitching people. Gu Nianji had not only warned Bai Jini to refrain from interfering with Song Jinning's illness, she had also warned her not to use the Bai family's influence to hinder Hua Xiaoheng's future. Also, the Bai family was in a tight spot because of Bai Yuxing's incident. Gu Nianji believed that the Bai family's clear-headed elders would not follow Bai Jini's lead. If Hua Xiaoheng agreed, Gu Nianji really wanted to sue Bai Jini in court and add a case to her postgraduate career. She would be able to test her skills in the legal world. Gu Nianji's threat was effective. The living room was silent for a moment. Everyone's gaze became conflicted, except for Song Jinning. Her eyes were unfocused and she could no longer focus. She had not eaten all day and her body swayed. She had to rely on Gu Nianji beside her to steady herself. In the silence, Hua Xiaoheng's phone rang. He took out his phone to see it was Chen Lai. He unlocked the phone and answered. "You got the news?" Chen Lai asked sternly, "Why is it early? Didn't you say after the new year?" "We'll talk when we meet. Have you shipped all your things?" "Most of them came with Dr. Yi a long time ago, but there are still a few precision core instruments and samples that I have to carry with me. Don't worry, I'll be boarding soon. I won't be in your way." Chen Lai hung up and boarded the private military plane that Hua Xiaoheng's personal secretary Yin Shixiang had found for him. He flew directly from Sea City to the imperial capital. Hua Xiaoheng hung up the phone. His expression did not change at all. It was as if he had just said goodbye to a good friend. No one could tell that he had been preparing for this moment for 6 years. Even Gu Nianji could not tell. It was even more impossible for anyone else to tell. The most important person was Bai Jini. She was frightened by Gu Nianji's words and was deep in thought. Hua Xiaoheng turned to look at Gu Nianji. "Shall we go?" "Let's go." Gu Nianji supported Song Jinning. "Mrs. Song, let's go get a car, okay?" Song Jinning nodded. "I'm hungry. Is there food in the car?" "Yes." Gu Nianji quickly looked at Hua Xiaoheng. "Hua Xiao, what about our luggage? This is our home, it's not like we'll never come back." Hua Xiaoheng walked forward nonchalantly. "Let's get Mrs. Song out of here first." Gu Nianji held Song Jinning's hand and coaxed her. "There's good food in the car. Let's go for a walk after eating. I've never been to the imperial capital before. Mrs. Song, have you been to many places?" Song Jinning was a native of the imperial capital. She frowned and thought about it. "There are many places to go in the imperial capital. Where do you want to go?" The two of them chatted as they walked out of the Hua Manor gates. They saw 4 cars parked outside like a small motorcade. They boarded the second sleek black military bulletproof sedan in the middle. Hua Xiaoheng went in first and sat on the far left of the back row. Gu Nianji sat in the middle and Song Jinning sat on the far right. As soon as she entered, she looked around curiously. She kept her eyes on Hua Xiaoheng, who sat on the other side of Gu Nianji. Hua Xiaoheng didn't look up. He looked straight ahead and said to the orderly Fan Jian, "Drive." The car drove out smoothly. Gu Nianji found a carton of milk in the small fridge in the car. Hua Xiaoheng took out a bag of macarons from the small cabinet on the car door and handed it to her. This was Gu Nianji's favorite kind of biscuits. Hua Xiaoheng had people prepare several bags of them every time and kept them sealed in the cabinet. Gu Nianji quickly opened it and took out a macaron. She placed it on a napkin for Song Jinning. "Eat it. You'll be full after drinking this carton of milk." "Thank you." Song Jinning quietly took it and sipped the milk as she ate the muffin. She ate with a dignified and elegant demeanor. The macarons were very fluffy and crumbs fell everywhere when she ate them. Therefore, some Western countries would use macarons to test whether a girl's eating manners were ladylike or not. The way Song Jinning ate was obviously the most ladylike of ladies. As someone with severe mental illness and whose memory had stopped at the age of 18, the way she ate was enough to prove that these rules were deeply ingrained in her memory. She didn't even need to think about it to show it. The car was soundproof, so they couldn't even hear Song Jinning eating. Gu Nianji tilted her head to look at Song Jinning eating and said emotionally, "Hua Xiao, now I know where you learned those rules when you trained me to eat." Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms in the car, his expression extremely calm. He didn't respond to Gu Nianji at all. Gu Nianji didn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to respond to her meaningless words. She just liked to talk and let everyone relax. Ever since she got into the car, she felt an indescribable tension in the air. It was like something was happening that she didn't know about. Hua Xiaoheng didn't speak and Fan Jian was focused on driving, so he didn't talk to her. Gu Nianji wanted to talk to Zhao Liangzi, who was sitting next to Fan Jian. "Brother Zhe, what have you been doing these past few days? Did you miss me?" Zhao Liangzi was speechless. Why did he suddenly feel like a cheetah was staring at the back of his neck? He shrunk his neck and didn't dare to speak. He slid down the seat. Gu Nianji saw that Zhao Yangzi didn't respond for a long time. She couldn't even see the back of his head anymore, so she didn't speak either. Fortunately, they arrived at the 6th Military Region's headquarters in the imperial capital half an hour later. Half a year had passed and the place was completely different from 6 months ago. Not to mention the top-notch security system, the high walls were equipped with countless infrared cameras and laser weapons that could destroy anyone who dared to climb over the walls at any time. There was a sign that said Military Restricted Area, about a mile away from the main entrance. Anyone who trespassed would be legally liable, and the highest punishment could be death on the spot. Hua Xiaoheng's motorcade scanned the invisible code at the main entrance, and a guard came out to check their passes before saluting and letting them in. Gu Nianji looked around and realized that the layout was very similar to the Special Operations Forces base in Sea City, but there were some differences in the details. She wanted to talk to Hua Xiaoheng, but he continued to ignore her until they got out of the car and entered Hua Xiaoheng's official residence at the headquarters. Yi Zitan was actually already waiting there. Seeing them enter, Yi Zitan came out to greet them and saluted. "Hello, Chief." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Chenlai will be here soon. Prepare everything. We'll start the surgery as soon as he arrives." "Yes, Chief." Yi Zitan didn't have time to greet Gu Nianji and immediately turned to a temporary operating room in the official residence to prepare for the surgery. Gu Nianji was confused and asked Hua Xiaoheng curiously, "Is Brother Qin coming? Who is he going to operate on?" Hua Xiaoheng gazed at her and reached out to pat her head. His voice was very gentle and moving. "Nianji, come here. I have something to tell you." This was the first 3,500-word chapter. Continue asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today's second and third chapters were 2 chapters in one, and it would be released at 7 p.m. P.S. A reminder to my friends, try not to make this book literary. Read it as soon as it's updated. If they make it literary, they won't be able to see the original flavor. Chapter 221. Hua Xiaoheng's voice was extremely magnetic. Gu Nianji didn't need to look at his face to be mesmerized by his voice. She smiled slightly and blushed as she followed Hua Xiaoheng to a room on the 2nd floor. The room was very large and there was a living room outside. The inside should be a bedroom and study? Gu Nianji only glanced at the furnishings in the room and saw the large bed with white striped sheets in the middle of the room. She couldn't help blushing even more. Wasn't that the same bed sheet she had bought for Hua Xiaoheng at the Special Operations Forces base in Sea City? Was this Hua Xiaoheng's bedroom? Gu Nianji was too embarrassed to ask. "Sit." Hua Xiaoheng had her sit on the large L-shaped sofa across from the bed. He went out to get a carton of iced milk from the fridge and heated it in the microwave before bringing it over for her to drink. Gu Nianji held the freshly warmed milk and sipped it. She raised a brow at Hua Xiaoheng and mumbled, "What is it?" "Hua Xiao, why are you so cautious?" Hua Xiaoheng closed the bedroom door and sat on the coffee table in front of the sofa. He faced Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji became even more nervous. She didn't even want to drink the milk anymore. She said timidly, "Hua Xiao, what is it? Don't scare me. You know I'm a coward." Her blushing face had now turned snow white. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the milk. Hua Xiaoheng looked down and removed the milk carton from her hands. He placed it on the coffee table beside him and held her hands that were gradually turning cold to warm them for a while before saying in a low voice, "Nianji, I want to ask you for a favor. Are you willing?" Yes, of course I'm willing." Gu Nianji sighed in relief when she heard it was only a favor. She immediately agreed to Hua Xiaoheng's request. Hua Xiaoheng looked up at her. His dark, jade-like eyes were like the abyss. They were extremely attractive to her. With such a pair of eyes focused on her, she wouldn't hesitate even if there was an abyss in front of her. "You haven't even heard me say what it is. How can you agree so easily?" Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand to wipe the milk foam from the corner of Gu Nianji's mouth. "Are you also this warm-hearted when you're outside?" "Of course not. If it was someone else, I would definitely ask clearly what the matter was and see if it was within my capabilities and if I could do it. But Hua Xiao, how could I refuse your request?" Gu Nianji winked playfully at Hua Xiaoheng. "Also, I want to flirt with you. If I don't show my sincerity, how can I seduce you?" "All right, tell me, what is it? I can definitely do it." Gu Nianji confidently held Hua Xiaoheng's warm palm. Hua Xiaoheng raised his neat, dashing eyebrows and looked at Gu Nianji inquiringly. "How do you know you can do it?" "Because Hua Xiao was the one who suggested it. If I couldn't do it, you wouldn't have mentioned it." Gu Nianji was very confident in Hua Xiaoheng, even more than she was in herself. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless for a long time. He squeezed her hand tightly and said in an even deeper voice, "Okay Nianji, it's like this. My mother's illness was caused by a genetic defect in her body and brain caused by an experimental accident." Gu Nianji, what was Huoxiao talking about? She didn't seem to understand. So my mother's illness wasn't just a psychological insanity, but also a biological genetic retrogression. A part of her brain cells, due to abnormal stimulation from the external magnetic field, began to continuously circulate in reverse, thus limiting her memory and thinking. This was also why she could only remember what had happened before she turned 18, but every day after that was a new day for her. This is because the top-secret experiment caused a change in the magnetic field, which caused the organic lesions in her body. So normal psychological treatment will never be effective, and will inevitably require special drug treatment. Huo Xiaoheng said all this in one breath, then stared closely at Gu Nianji's face, paying attention to the changes in her expression. Gu Nianji still looked confused, but she nodded. Is that so? No wonder Bai Jini's psychological treatment didn't work for 16 years. So it wasn't just a mental illness caused by psychological problems, but also an organic lesion caused by magnetic field stimulation. Yes. 8 years ago, I had brought Qinlai home to treat my mother in secret. Qinlai confirmed the cause of the illness, and suggested that we must find a drug to repair my mother's damaged brain cells, and stop the reverse growth of that part of the brain cells. But even with his ability, he still couldn't find a drug to treat this genetic defect, even after a long time. Huo Xiaoheng sighed and looked down at Gu Nianji's soft, almost boneless hand, and gently held it in his palm. Gu Nianji thought about it and said, "This illness sounds like it's in the category of difficult to treat." After a pause, she asked again, "But you brought Mrs. Song here today and even asked Qinlai and Yi Zitan to prepare for the surgery. Did you find the drug to treat Mrs. Song?" Huo Xiaoheng raised his head with difficulty, and looked into Gu Nianji's large, clear eyes. The words tumbled in his heart for a long time, but he couldn't say them. Qinlai had never been able to find a suitable drug to treat Song Jining. Until 6 years ago, when the special magnetic field had appeared somewhere in Sea City, Huo Xiaoheng had been ordered to protect Bai Jini as she entered the magnetic field to obtain data. It was at that time that the car Gu Nianji was in suddenly entered the magnetic field, and was attacked by Bai Jini's men. It immediately burst into flames. Gu Nianji trespassed on a military ground, and was supposed to die. She cried and struggled in the fire, her terrified expression reflected in Huo Xiaoheng's eyes through the raging flames. He suddenly couldn't bear to see her and refused to retreat immediately. Instead, he risked his life and rushed in to rescue her from the burning car. Then the car immediately exploded into nothingness, and not even a speck of smoke was left. It was as if it had been completely annihilated. Of course, after saving Gu Nianji, they realized that although the little girl's origins were unknown, she must have had an extraordinary background. It was obvious from the blueprints in the small backpack she was carrying. In addition, the rescued Gu Nianji only recognized Huo Xiaoheng, so the military decided that Huo Xiaoheng would be Gu Nianji's guardian. He would personally take care of her and work hard to find out the truth about her background. It would be best if he could directly contact the person behind her who had the blueprints. Later, during the process of treating Gu Nianji, Qinlai secretly told Huo Xiaoheng that the natural magnetic field that Gu Nianji had entered was exactly the same as the magnetic field that had appeared when the famous physicist Song Haichuan, Huo Xiaoheng's grandfather, had failed a top-secret military experiment 10 years ago. And Gu Nianji's symptoms were very similar to Song Jining's. In other words, the environment and mechanism of Gu Nianji's illness were almost exactly the same as Song Jining's, and the resulting symptoms were also similar. The only difference was that Gu Nianji's body was very special. Her body cells had a very perfect self-repair function, and the genes that had been damaged under the powerful magnetic field attack were actually slowly repaired by her body. Although every human body cells had a certain DNA repair function, this function was magnified countless times in Gu Nianji's body. Therefore, Qinlai came up with an idea to use the hematopoietic stem cells in Gu Nianji's bone marrow and inject them into Song Jining's body. Using Gu Nianji's special constitution, would it help Song Jining's genes repair? Of course, this was only Qinlai's idea, and he still needed to verify it with more data. Although Gu Nianji's own recovery ability was very strong, after she recovered, she had lost all her memories before the age of 12. Qinlai didn't know if it was a side effect caused by the magnetic field. Regarding this, Qinlai indicated that he would continue to observe. Although Gu Nianji didn't have memories before the age of 12, she could live like a normal person. To Huo Xiaoheng, it was enough if Song Jining could live like a normal person. Even if she lost her memories of the past, Huo Xiaoheng didn't care. In a sense, Gunyanji was Hua Xiaoheng's last hope. Her successful recovery proved that her blood cells had this ability. However, she was young at the time and her health was unstable. She was very emotional and she had lost a lot of her memories. They didn't know if it was good or bad, so they didn't dare to use the hematopoietic stem cells in her bone marrow to treat Song Jining. After 6 years of observation, Qinlai thought that when Gunyanji became an adult, it would be time to give it a try. Hua Xiaoheng had brought her home this time to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He wanted his family to accept her and he wanted her to get to know his mother. That way, after the new year, he would persuade Gunyanji to help treat his mother. In the end, what happened after he returned home was a few days faster than he had expected. Hua Xiaoheng held Gunyanji's hand, and his emotions became even more complicated. Gunyanji saw that Hua Xiaoheng didn't speak for a long time, and felt a little strange, but she didn't rush him. She only waited patiently. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a long time, and finally looked up at Gunyanji. He finally said, "Yes, we found the medicine that can treat my mother. It's you." Gunyanji was surprised for a moment, and then quickly smiled from the bottom of her heart. "Really? I can really treat Mrs. Song? Tell me. How can I help her?" Hua Xiaoheng froze and instinctively asked, "You're really willing? Really willing to treat my mother's illness?" "Of course." Gunyanji didn't hesitate to pull her hand out of his, and leaned forward to pat his shoulder. "No problem, just do it. Where do you want it? Her leg or her arm?" "Of course not." Hua Xiaoheng laughed. "Qinlai said that the hematopoietic stem cells in your bone marrow should be enough. We'll do the surgery as soon as he gets here." Gunyanji sighed and smiled. "That's a big deal. I thought it was for your mother." At the same time, Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. "Qinlai said that it's best if we do it at the same time. Then, we'll give her anesthetics." Gunyanji thought about it and asked quietly, "Will it hurt?" "Of course." Hua Xiaoheng patted her head. "You'll be fine once you wake up." Gunyanji was very confident in Qinlai's medical skills, and completely trusted Hua Xiaoheng's character. Also, she really liked Song Jining and sincerely hoped that she could recover from now on, and never forget her own son again. Sigh. Gunyanji sighed again when she thought of Song Jining. "What's wrong?" Hua Xiaoheng stood up. "Why are you sighing? If you don't want to." "It's not that I don't want to. I'm just thinking about your mother." Gunyanji rested her chin on one hand and said thoughtfully, "If she gets better, I don't know if she'll be able to take it when she remembers what happened all these years. My mother is a tenacious woman, she'll be able to take it." Hua Xiaoheng pulled Gunyanji to her feet. "Qinlai should be here soon. Let's wait for him outside. This is the second update, and I'm begging for monthly and recommendation votes. P.S. A reminder to my friends, try not to make this book literary and read it as soon as it's updated. If they make it literary, they won't be able to see the original flavor." Chapter 222. Gunyanji followed Hua Xiaoheng out of his official residence and looked around. Winter in the imperial capital had always been cold, and it had snowed heavily on Christmas Eve. The snow hadn't melted yet. The black ground was covered in patches of snow. There were patches of black and white, and it had a unique flavor to it. There was no snow on the road leading to the official residence, so there must be a temperature control device buried under the road. They hadn't been out for long when they saw a motorcade drive in again. "Sir, Senior Colonel Qinlai has arrived." Hua Xiaoheng nodded and folded his hands behind his back as he stood with Gunyanji and watched the motorcade stop on the path in front of the official residence. The door of the first car opened and Qinlai stepped out with a large suitcase. He still had a round face, a round nose and round eyes. He wore round black-rimmed glasses and his figure was even rounder. He looked even fatter than a few months ago. Gunyanji couldn't help but open her arms and walk over to hug him. "Brother Qin, it's so good to see you." Qinlai smiled and patted her back. "Brother Qin missed you too. Yanji, how are you? How have you been? Let's talk inside." Hua Xiaoheng pulled Gunyanji over and turned to walk towards the main entrance. Qinlai chuckled and chased after them with the suitcase. "Hua Xiao, is this the attitude you used to beg? Yanji and I haven't seen each other in a long time. What's wrong with a hug? Do you have to turn around and leave just like that?" Hua Xiaoheng glared at him. "Hurry up and prepare for surgery. We don't have much time." Qinlai pouted. "What do you mean we don't have much time? Are you looking down on my medical skills or something? Come on. Let's fight on the operating table. Let's see whose scalpel is better." Gunyanji turned around and blushed at Qinlai. "Brother Qin, why would Hua Xiao want to compete with you? Do you dare compete with Hua Xiao in marksmanship? Go away. I know you only care about your uncle Hua. Chen Lai winked at Hua Xiaoheng meaningfully. He then noticed that Gu Nianji had changed the way she addressed him. Why aren't you calling me uncle anymore? Aren't you afraid Hua Xiao will beat you up? Hua Xiao never hits me. Gu Nianji looked proud. Brother Chen, you don't understand. Yes. I don't understand, only the two of you do. I wish that you have no wings of the flying rainbow phoenix, and that your hearts are of one mind. Is that all right? Chen Lai was sensitive to the change in the atmosphere between Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. Sure enough, Hua Xiaoheng didn't even look at him. He continued to walk forward with a calm expression. His military posture was ramrod straight, unlike in the past when he would glare at him and warn him when he teased him like this. However, Hua Xiaoheng didn't respond, so Gu Nianji retorted bluntly, Brother Chen, don't be so literary. If you have the time, read your medical books more. Don't read those messy poems and lyrics. Even if you read them 100 times, Dr. Yi still wouldn't understand. Shut up. Chen Lai caught a glimpse of Yi Zitan's silhouette appearing on the steps of the official residence in front of him. His face was pale with anxiety, and he glared at Gu Nianji to stop her. Gu Nianji nodded proudly. Brother Chen, you reap what you sow. If you dare tease Hua Xiao again, I'll go bully Dr. Yi. Hua Xiaoheng glared at her. With just one glance, Gu Nianji obediently shut up and obediently walked forward with him. Yi Zitan was nearby watching them walk over. Chen Lai didn't dare to tease Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji anymore. However, he wasn't willing to be controlled by Gu Nianji like this. He muttered quietly, what is love in this world? It's like tofu and brine. Everything has its vanquisher. Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji. The three of them arrived at the steps of the official residence. Yi Zitan saluted Hua Xiaoheng and Chen Lai. Sir, the operating room is ready. Chen Lai and Hua Xiaoheng's expressions immediately turned serious. Where's your mother? Chen Lai asked Hua Xiaoheng first. Hua Xiaoheng looked at Yi Zitan. Dr. Yi took my mother in just now. Yi Zitan quickly said, the patient has been anesthetized. She's in operating room B. Chen Lai nodded and looked Gu Nianji up and down, then back at Hua Xiaoheng. Did you tell Nianji everything? Hua Xiaoheng understood what he meant and grunted. Nianji, are you ready? I'm fine, Gu Nianji replied immediately. She even took off her coat and rolled up the sleeves of her cashmere sweater to reveal her fair, delicate arms. Look, I'm ready anytime. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Chen Lai smiled as he pulled Gu Nianji's sleeves down. Let's go. Follow me in. Gu Nianji followed Chen Lai into operating room A. Yi Zitan was wearing a full set of sterile surgical gowns and a pair of surgical gloves that reached her elbows. Her face was covered with a large blue surgical mask. She was fully armed as she waited beside a very high-end operating chair. This operating chair had been personally designed by Chen Lai. It was custom-made by the Imperial Military's most skilled craftsmen and the most advanced factory. It was more convenient to use and had more functions than a surgical bed. Outside operating room A was a small lounge and pantry. Chen Lai put down the box and had two orderlies in sterile surgical gowns carry it into the back room while he spoke to Gu Nianji from the outside. Nianji, are you really ready? You're volunteering, right? Chen Lai asked very seriously. Don't worry about Hua Xiao. Tell Brother Chen, are you really willing? Gu Nianji's smile faded and she also said very seriously, Brother Chen, I'm really sincere. I want to help Mrs. Song. I want her illness to be cured. If I can really help her, don't be soft-hearted. Take as much bone marrow as you need. I'm young, I'm not afraid. Chen Lai looked at her emotionally and closed his eyes. He murmured, Nianji, you won't blame us, will you? Why would I blame you? Gu Nianji didn't understand. You saved my life and I originally had no way to repay you. Now that I have a chance to repay you, I'm more than happy. What are you talking about, Brother Chen? Chen Lai grinned. Yes, Brother Chen is overthinking things. Good job, Nianji. Come, go to the sterilization room inside and stay for 5 minutes. When you come out, change into surgical gowns, then go to the back room and find Dr. Yi. She'll give you general anesthesia. Gu Nianji listened attentively and repeated the steps and process to Chen Lai before walking to the sterilization room inside. Chen Lai went to the men's sterilization room on the other side and changed into a full surgical gown. He went to room A to assemble his sophisticated instruments. Yi Zitan helped him from the side, and the two of them worked together to quickly prepare the surgical instruments he needed. Mrs. Song is in room B. The anesthesia has been completed, Yi Zitan reported to Chen Lai. Qinlai went to room B to check on Song Jining, who had already fainted, and drew a few more vials of blood. While waiting for Gu Nianji, he also checked Song Jining's blood routine. The data was, of course, inconceivable and defied common sense. Qinlai shook his round head and sighed. Actually, so many people want to go against their growth. But who knew that if they really went against their growth, even their intelligence would grow? A 30-year-old with an 18-year-old's IQ, or an 18-year-old with an 8-year-old's IQ? Which combination would you want? These were all choices that made one's balls hurt. Yi Zitan had been very nervous, but when she heard Qinlai's words she couldn't help but giggle. Both of them wore surgical masks that covered most of their faces and hats, so they could only see each other's eyes. But to Qinlai, seeing Yi Zitan's smiling face was enough to make him very satisfied. Yes, that's it. Smile more and don't be too nervous. Qinlai instinctively comforted Yi Zitan. At that moment, Gu Nianji changed into surgical gowns and went from the sterilization room to operating room A. She called out, "Dr. Yi?" Yi Zitan quickly replied, "Coming." She quickly walked to operating room A and led Gu Nianji to lie on the operating chair. Then she put a mask on her face. Gu Nianji fainted in a second. Yi Zitan took out a thick needle and inserted it into the back of Gu Nianji's spine. Hua Xiaoheng stood in the middle of the living room and looked at his watch. According to the timetable Qinlai had given him, it was time for the surgery to begin. He calculated the time and waved for Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi to come in. He ordered, "Big Xiong, take a company of armed guards and set up a perimeter 500 meters away from the base. No one is allowed to enter for the next 3 hours." Yin Shixiang froze but didn't ask why. He immediately stood at attention and saluted, "Yes, Chief." After Yin Shixiang left, Hua Xiaoheng ordered Zhao Liangzi, "Take the electronic unit and monitor the movements of the Imperial Capital garrison troops for the next 3 hours. Report to me immediately if there's anything out of the ordinary. Also, here's a list of names. I want their phones, landlines, and all electronic network equipment, as well as the nearby surveillance cameras. I want them all under your surveillance." Zhao Liangzi took the list and saluted, "Yes, Chief." Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi didn't understand why Hua Xiaoheng had made such an arrangement at first. It wasn't until 15 minutes later that Zhao Liangzi discovered the phones of the people he was monitoring were frequently contacting each other. The communications of the Imperial Capital garrison troops were chaotic for a while, but were eventually suppressed by some big shot. There were no signs of troops being mobilized. In the end, only the SWAT team from the police headquarters was successfully mobilized to the 6th Military Region's base. Hua Xiaoheng received Zhao Liangzi's message and immediately turned on his computer to monitor Yin Shixiang's situation. The Deputy Secretary General of the Imperial Central Government Secretariat, Bai Changhui, and his sister, Bai Jini, were rushing over with 100 SWAT team members. At the same time, in a professor's building at B University, He Jichu sat in front of a table and looked at the photos in front of him. His expression was frighteningly cold. The photos were of Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. The photo in the middle was of a snowy Christmas Eve. Hua Xiaoheng, dressed in military uniform, was quietly hugging Gu Nianji under the streetlights. There was another photo of Gu Nianji lying in his arms with a face full of longing. The most recent photo was of the two of them shopping in Sion Square. Gu Nianji was beaming with joy while Hua Xiaoheng looked back at her calmly. The love in his eyes was overflowing. That was the first 3,000-word update. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today's second update was at 7 p.m. I'm done with my updates, so let me rest for 2 days. Kiss me, my dear readers, kiss me one by one. Chapter 223. Professor He. As you can see, Gu Nianji's background isn't simple. When Shui stood in front of He Jichu's desk and pointed at the photos. According to our investigation, this man's name is Hua Xiaoheng. He's a major general in the Huaxia Imperial Army and the acting commander of the newly established 6th Military Region. He's also Gu Nianji's guardian. She chuckled. This little girl's luck is pretty good. She's able to hook up with important people wherever she goes. He Jichu picked up the Christmas Eve photo and flicked it. His shimmering, sultry eyes flashed coldly. His emotions were extremely conflicted. He should be happy to know that Gu Nianji had been living well for the past 6 years. But living so well had exceeded his expectations and he couldn't stand it. Of course, what he couldn't stand the most was seeing the undisguised love and dependence in Gu Nianji's eyes. When Shui glanced at He Jichu, he sat with his back to the light, and the outline of his facial features looked even more three-dimensional and deep in the dim light. His cold nose bridge, cold thin lips, and a pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes that always carried a gentle smile, but now there was not a trace of warmth. His entire body exuded a cold aura that prevented anyone from getting close. "Why did you only give me the photos today?" Hijichu was silent for a moment before slowly looking up. His cold gaze made Wen Shuyi's back break out in cold sweat. She suppressed her discomfort and smiled. "I also just got the information about Hua Xiaoheng. This man rarely appears in public. I paid a lot of money to get the inside information about the Huaxia Imperial Army. I only know his name and rank. I don't know anything else." She wouldn't bring the photos to Hijichu without having all the information prepared. With Hua Xiaoheng's background, it wasn't easy for Wen Shuyi to hire someone to take these photos. Hijichu waved his hand. "Go out. I need to think about it." Wen Shuyi nodded slightly and backed out. She gently closed the door to Hijichu's study. She stood with her back against the door for a while. She was in a great mood. This time it was truly an unintentional act of kindness. They had originally sent people to follow Gunyenji. They hadn't expected such an important person to appear. Many of the photos were taken with a telephoto lens. It was a professional tracking lens, so the people were very clear. There were a few photos that were as beautiful as postcards. They were indeed remarkable. Hijichu sat quietly in the study and stared at the photos for a long time in a daze. His fingers caressed Gunyenji's pretty little face, and his expression was one of longing. After a long time he picked up his phone and dialed Gunyenji's number. However, no one picked up the phone. After several rings, Gunyenji's voicemail appeared on her phone. Hijichu thought about it and left a message on her phone. "Yenji? I'm Professor He. School is about to start. When will you have time to drop by? I want to get to know everyone." In Hua Xiaoheng's official residence at the headquarters of the 6th Military Region, Gunyenji lay unconscious on the operating chair in Operating Room A. After Yi Zitan extracted Gunyenji's bone marrow, she immediately sent it to Chunlai to inject it into Song Jinning's vein. Because Song Jinning had been ill for a long time, the genetic damage in her brain cells was more serious, so she needed more bone marrow fluid, and the concentration was higher. However, this kind of extraction and injection could not be done in one go. It had to be done in small batches. Outside the operating room, Hua Xiaoheng was worried about the two people in the operating room as he waited for Yin Shixiang to send him a message. The Deputy Secretary General of the Huaxia Imperial Central Government Secretariat, Bai Changhui, sat in a car that drove up in a hurry. He said to his sister Bai Jini, "Jini, what's wrong with you? Why did you let Hua Xiaoheng take her away? You've been working for Hua Guanchen for so many years, but you can't even get a title. Are you going to hang yourself for the rest of your life?" Bai Jini was very anxious. She did not control her temper in front of her brother. "Now is not the time to talk about this. Song Jinning is the key. She's been having some problems lately and I'm very worried." "What are you worried about? Haven't you been treating her for so many years? Why isn't she cured yet?" Bai Changhui frowned. "If you really can't cure her, just give up. How's your research going?" "There's still a problem. I can't restore the original experimental data." Bai Jini grew even more frustrated. She couldn't accept that an experiment had been going on for 16 years without any results. Is Song Jinning the only way out? Bai Changhui closed his eyes and leaned against the back of the car. He murmured, if only second brother had participated in the experiment as a military representative. Too bad it was Hua Guanyu. If it was second brother, he wouldn't have gone down this path. He's dead now, what's the point of talking about him? Bai Jini was silent. The second brother they were talking about was Bai Yuxing, who had been secretly executed by Hua Xiaoheng overseas for treason. You don't want to talk about it? Second brother was supposed to go, but you forced me to intercede and let the eldest Hua family Hua Guanyuan go instead. I thought you had your eyes on Hua Guanyuan. How much effort did you put in to get him to enter the laboratory as a military representative? Bai Changhui recalled the past and was overcome with emotion. Hua Guanyuan was a senior colonel 16 years ago, and Hua Guanchen was just a lowly captain at the time. The difference was like night and day. Bai Jini smiled. I was just a postdoc at the time. How could I compare to Hua Guanyuan? The truth was, Hua Guanyuan had been the first person she'd fallen for. Unfortunately, Hua Guanyuan had someone else in his heart, and he hadn't even given a damn about her. Bai Jini grew irritated at the thought. She took out a pack of cigarettes from her bag and started smoking. Bai Changhui snatched the pack and threw it out of the car window. How old are you? And you're still smoking? Do you want to die? Of course I want to die. I won't rest in peace if I don't complete this experiment. Bai Jini was determined. She couldn't let Song Jining fall into someone else's hands. As the siblings spoke, the police car in front of them cleared the way. They were already a mile away from the main entrance of the 6th Military Region's military base. According to the usual practice of Wuxia Imperial military bases, there was a military restricted area sign erected a mile away, warning vehicles not to enter without a permit. Bai Changhui had been dragged here by his sister, Bai Jini. He hadn't been able to find anyone familiar with the military to mobilize the garrison troops, so in the end, he had no choice but to ask his old subordinates from the police headquarters and borrow 100 or so SWAT officers. In their minds, the newly established 6th Military Region wasn't very important. The 6th Military Region was formerly the Special Operations Forces of the Imperial Army. Simply put, it was just a secret service organization that specialized in spying. In the eyes of the upper echelons of the Imperial Army, the 6th Military Region's combat power was inherently lacking. It couldn't be compared to the other 5 major military regions. That was why Bai Changhui had dared to bring 100 or so SWAT officers to the 6th Military Region's headquarters. For a soldier, strength was gained through fighting, not through the accumulation of organizational structures. Hua Xiaoheng understood this well, which was why he was able to adapt to the situation in a short time and achieve the effect of killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Not only would he be able to treat his mother's illness, but he would also be able to divide the Bai family and establish the 6th Military Region's authority in the imperial capital. Secretary General Bai, look at the sign in front. Bai Changhui's driver stopped the car in front of the military restricted area sign. They didn't have a permit, so they didn't know how to drive in. Bai Changhui looked around and waved his hand. Drive in, I'll take responsibility if anything happens. His driver had no choice but to start the car and force his way into the military restricted area. Bang 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 bang. As soon as the car crossed the line, a few gunshots rang out. All 4 wheels of Bai Changhui and Bai Jini's car were shot out at the same time. It was the second watch. Good night, dear friends. Chew them one by one. I forgot to mention my recommendation votes. Remember to vote every day, dear friends. Chapter 224. The car screeched to a halt. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini, who hadn't fastened their seatbelts in the back of the car, were thrown off balance by the inertia. Their heads smashed against the back of the seat in front of them, causing 2 large bumps to form on their heads. Do you know how to drive? I'm going to fire you. Bai Changhui covered his forehead and yelled at the driver. What the hell are you doing? You're the Deputy Secretary General of the Imperial Central Government Secretariat, and you're driving a car with flat tires. Bai Jini gritted her teeth as she rubbed her head. The driver in the front seat gripped the steering wheel with both hands. His face was pale with fright. He sat trembling in the driver's seat and said shakily, Secretary General Bai, the tires didn't burst on their own. Someone shot them. What? Bai Changhui looked out the window but couldn't see what was wrong with the tires. Yin Shixiang and his men were using sniper rifles with silencers. Their bullets were fast, accurate and ruthless. 2 snipers lined up on either side of the road and fired simultaneously. Each of them blew up 2 tires. The car Bai Changhui and his men were in was soundproof to begin with. Aside from the driver, Bai Changhui and Bai Jini had no idea that someone had shot the tires. The driver used to be a soldier in the army. After his discharge, he became a chauffeur for the Imperial Central Government. He also worked as a bodyguard for government officials. Of course, he wasn't as good as a professional bodyguard, but he was the best among all the chauffeurs. And among all the bodyguards, he was the best chauffeur. This kind of person was favored by some of the mid-level officials in the central government. After the car crashed, he recalled the vibration he had felt earlier and deduced that the tires had been shot. Bai Changhui patted the seat and said irritably, Open the door, I'm going out to take a look. The chauffeur hesitated and said nervously, Secretary General Bai, it says military restricted area here. Please don't ignore it. If this goes on, they'll shoot you on the spot. Nonsense. They wouldn't dare touch a hair on my 3rd brother's head no matter what. Bai Jini didn't believe that Hua Xiaoheng could be so ruthless. More than a decade ago, Hua Xiaoheng had given Bai Jini the impression that he was a polite, well-behaved and taciturn young man who had never done anything out of line. Although he became a soldier, wasn't a soldier the most disciplined? Bai Changhui hesitated. He leaned against the seat in front of him and asked uneasily, Is it really that serious? He didn't have much contact with the military, and he had some acquaintances in the military who took good care of him, so he didn't know much about military law. Secretary General Bai, What do I get out of lying to you? The driver smiled bitterly. Please don't move. I'll go down and beg them. Then we'll back off. As he spoke, he opened the door and got out of the car with his hands raised. I'm the driver of Deputy Secretary General Bai of the Imperial Central Government Secretariat. I want to see your boss. I have something to say. Yin Shixiang and the guards were lying in ambush on both sides of the road. They did not answer and only called Hua Xiaoheng to ask quietly. Hua Xiao, what should we do next? Have them retreat beyond the cordon and try to buy as much time as possible, Hua Xiaoheng ordered in a low voice. Only an hour had passed and Qin Lai's surgery was still in progress. Hua Xiaoheng didn't plan to go out and face the Bais right now. Yin Shixiang received the order and chuckled. He knew it was time for him to go out and buy time. Come out of the car with your hands up. Remember, only hands up. I'll shoot the arms of anyone who puts their hands down. Yin Shixiang walked out of the ambush, gun in hand and mask over his face. I'll count to 1, 2, 3. Come out. Run. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini's expressions changed when they saw the fully armed and masked soldier walk out of the forest. Which unit are you from? What's your designation? Who's your boss? Tell him to come out and see me. Bai Changhui was in a high position and didn't care to reason with soldiers. He only wanted Hua Xiaoheng to come out. Bai Jini also said, I'm warning you, you've made a serious mistake. Hurry up and hand over the man or else, not coming out? Yin Shixiang ignored the two men's chatter. He raised his gun and fired a shot through the window. Bai Changhui's car didn't have bulletproof windows because he wasn't qualified. 2 gunshots rang out, and 2 bullet holes appeared in Bai Jini's car window. The bullets flew into the seat and barely grazed Bai Jini's face. She froze in fear and couldn't speak for a long time. I'll say it again. Come out with your hands up. Get out of the police line. I'll give you 1 minute. If you don't come out, I'll blast your car with a rocket launcher. Yin Shixiang's finger was on the trigger of his sniper rifle again. Bai Changhui turned his head to look out the window and saw that his driver had long since run past the police line. The 100 or so SWAT officers they had brought were all armed to the teeth, but they were all standing outside the police line. Not a single one of them had stepped into the police line. Bai Changhui gritted his teeth. He knew he was going to lose face this time. He glared at his sister, then turned to look at Yin Shixiang. He raised his hands, got out of the car and quickly ran out of the police line. Bai Jini saw that the situation wasn't looking good. She opened her car door and ran back with her hands up. They were both out of the police line in less than a minute. Yin Shixiang put away his gun and pointed at the surrounding trees and walls. Look carefully. Only people with passes can enter the police line. Which one of you has a pass? Bai Changhui had arrived in a hurry and hadn't had time to get a pass from the military. He could only glare at Bai Jini again before changing his domineering attitude. He took out a cloth from his trouser pocket and wiped his glasses. He said to Yin Shixiang in a friendly tone, It's all a misunderstanding. I'm Deputy Secretary General Bai of the Central Government Secretariat. Your Major General Hua took away Song Jining. She's an important person that both the central government and the military are keeping a close eye on. Please return her to us. Yin Shixiang snorted and rested his sniper rifle on his shoulder. He shook his head and said loudly, Mrs. Song is our Major General's biological mother. Our Major General is also a high-ranking military officer. May I ask what your relationship with Mrs. Song is? Why should we hand Mrs. Song over to you? How can you make such a ridiculous request? Do you have a Lushan waterfall in your head? Bai Changhui hadn't expected the soldier to be so sharp-tongued. He was even better at quibbling than the Deputy Secretary General of the Secretariat. Bai Jini saw that her brother wasn't saying anything, so she had no choice but to take matters into her own hands. She put on an anxious expression and said, You won't understand even if I explain it to you. Go find Xiaoheng and tell him Aunt Bai is looking for him. Our Major General's mother was an only child. She had no sisters. May I ask what kind of aunt you are? Yin Shixiang was the most eloquent of Hua Xiaoheng's 4 personal secretaries. He could shut Bai Jini up with a single sentence. Bai Changhui saw that the soldier wasn't going to budge. He remembered a government order from years ago. He immediately called his office and ordered his subordinates to find the government order related to Song Jining and send it to him. The order clearly stated that the Imperial Central Government's Ministry of Science and Technology and the military would jointly oversee Song Jining's treatment. They would find out what had happened in the laboratory and help the experiment continue. Bai Jini was the director of the Ministry of Science and Technology's Institute of High Energy Physics. She represented the Ministry of Science and Technology and could also provide psychological treatment for Song Jining. The military was represented by Song Jining's ex-husband, Huo Guanchen, the director of the political department. Because Song Jining was severely mentally ill, she was legally considered to be incapacitated. Therefore, with this legal basis, Bai Jini could openly take Song Jining away. However, the government order had been sitting in his office for more than 10 years. He had almost forgotten about it. Only now, when the other party had unhesitatingly stopped him at the 6th Military Region's headquarters, did he remember that there had been a government order that had never been used before. Yin Shixiang heard Bai Changhui on the phone and heard the words, "government order." His expression changed. He quickly sent a message to Zhao Liangzi, asking him what was going on. Zhao Liangzi quickly searched for any information on Song Jining and found the government order from years ago. He immediately reported it to Huo Xiaoheng. To his surprise, Huo Xiaoheng wasn't the least bit surprised. He straightened his uniform and put on a bulletproof vest. They're only thinking about the government order now. How stupid. If it weren't for the legally binding government order, Huo Xiaoheng wouldn't have urged Chen Lai to save Song Jining as quickly as possible. He really didn't have much time. Huo Xiaoheng glanced at his watch and gave the order. "Second Guard Company, assemble. Follow me out in half an hour." Before he left, he went to the electronics unit led by Zhao Liangzi to make some follow-up arrangements. When half an hour was almost up, Huo Xiaoheng finally left the official residence. He got into his bulletproof car and rode with the security company on motorcycles to the security perimeter of the 6th Military Region's headquarters. As the people from Bai Changhui's office escorted the government order to Huo Xiaoheng's office, Huo Xiaoheng led his own guard company to the police line a mile away from the 6th Military Region's headquarters. He got out of the bulletproof car wearing white gloves on both hands, a bulletproof helmet on his head, and sunglasses that covered half of his face. The holster on his waist exuded the smell of gunpowder. With his hands behind his back, he stood majestically in front of everyone. Bai Changhui looked at him and sneered. "Major General Huo sure is cautious. You're armed to the teeth, aren't you? Are you afraid we'll make a move?" "I'm not afraid of you. I'm just worried that you'll try something sneaky." Huo Xiaoheng bowed slightly and nodded politely. "Deputy Secretary General Bai, may I ask why you're barging into the 6th Military Region's headquarters?" "Don't play dumb." Bai Jini pointed a finger at Huo Xiaoheng. "You weren't like this before. Now you've become so arrogant and domineering. How sad would your mother be if she found out?" This was the first night watch, 3,000 words long. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today's second night watch was at 7 p.m. Thank you to Huaishuan Mai for tipping Heshabi yesterday. Mwah. Dear readers, please chew on it one by one. Chapter 225. Huo Xiaoheng didn't even look at Bai Jini. He only spoke to Bai Changhui. He took 2 steps forward and stepped out of the police line. He adjusted his white gloves and smiled at Bai Changhui. "Deputy Secretary General Bai, did you get permission from the Senate to come to the Special Operations Forces headquarters?" The Empire's administrative department and the military were not allowed to interact in private. They had to be approved by the parliament and recorded before they could do so. Bai Changhui had come in a hurry, so he didn't have the chance to get permission from the council. However, he had the secret documents in hand, so he wasn't afraid of Huo Xiaoheng's questioning. "Major General Huo, don't change the subject. I have a legal document signed by the Empire's Ministry of Administration and the military. It clearly states that Song Jining will be under the care of the Ministry of Administration's Science and Technology Department and the military. You'd better hand Song Jining over." Bai Changhui waved the document in front of Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiaoheng slowly extended his hand. "Is that so? How come I didn't know about this document?" "You don't know? Yoho. No wonder you had the guts to snatch him away. So you didn't know." Bai Changhui laughed so hard that tears were coming out of his eyes. He handed the document back to him. All right, it's a misunderstanding. Major General Huo, can you hand him over now?" Huo Xiaoheng took the document and flipped through it. It was about 20 pages long. He said to Bai Changhui, "This is very important. I need to read this document carefully to see if it's true." Bai Changhui waved his hand. "Feel free to look around. I'll wait here." Bai Jini breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they could attract Huo Xiaoheng here, they wouldn't have to worry about Song Jining being transferred away. Other than Huo Xiaoheng, Bai Jini believed that no one else would have the guts to do anything to Song Jining. Huo Xiaoheng took the document and slowly walked back into the cordon. Returning to his bulletproof car, he stretched his legs and placed the document on his knees, flipping through the pages. As time ticked by, Hua Xiaoheng kept glancing at his watch from the corner of his eye. He had seen a copy of this document from grandfather Hua a long time ago and had read it from beginning to end countless times. He was extremely familiar with every punctuation in it. Of course, he would not tell Bai Changhui that he had read the document. He would never knowingly violate the law. That way, even if they wanted to sue him, he could use ignorance is not a crime to defend himself. Moreover, he was a major general. Although his rank was not as high as his father, General Hua Guanchen, his security clearance was even higher than Hua Guanchen's. Moreover, as the leaders of the Special Operations Forces, they should be in charge of matters related to the military's top-secret experiments. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the document and thought about how to remove the Science and Technology Department from the document and forbid Bai Jini from interfering with his mother's affairs. He never fought a battle he was not confident of winning, but once he decided to fight, he would beat the opponent until they had no strength to fight back. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini stood in the cold for more than half an hour, but Hua Xiaoheng still hadn't returned. "Third brother, what's going on with Hua Xiaoheng? Why did you take so long to read a document?" Bai Jini frowned. "It's just over 20 pages. 10 minutes should be enough, right?" Bai Changhui was in a better mood and began to tease Bai Jini. "Do you think everyone is as smart as you and can read 10 lines at a glance?" Bai Changhui was in a better mood and began to tease Bai Jini. They were the direct descendants of the Bai family. There were 3 brothers and 1 sister, all born from the same mother. Later, when everyone grew up and had their own families and careers, they were no longer as close as they were when they were young. The closest person to Bai Jini was her third brother, Bai Changhui. The eldest, Bai Jianqing, was the most serious and introverted. He was the head of the Bai family. The second brother was Bai Yuxing, who had recently defected and died in a diving accident in South America. The third brother was Bai Changhui, the Deputy Secretary General of the Imperial Administrative Department. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini were close in age and had played together as children. After Bai Changhui got married, he still treated Bai Jini as well as before. Unlike the eldest brother, Bai Jianqing, and the second brother, Bai Yuxing, who had focused on their own families after marriage, Bai Jini had been rebellious when she was younger and refused to have a boyfriend. No matter how her family tried to persuade her, she wouldn't listen. She had always said that if she couldn't have the one she loved, she would rather not have anyone. In the end, she finally had a boyfriend in her 30s. It was the second son of the Hua family, Hua Guanchen. Hua Guanchen had only been divorced for 6 months at the time, and he was already dating Bai Jini. Although Bai Jini's personal problems had been difficult, she had been the smartest and most educated child in the Bai family. She had studied at a prestigious university and had even become a postdoc. Bai Jianqing, the eldest brother of the Bai family, had been very supportive of Bai Jini's decision to pursue an academic career. He had said that the Bai family had people in every industry except for academics, so he had strongly supported Bai Jini and helped her become a student of the famous high-energy physicist Song Haichuan. 20 years later, Bai Jini had become the director of the Institute of High-Energy Physics of the Imperial Department of Science and Technology. Although the military's top-secret experiment led by Song Haichuan, who studied high-energy physics, failed, the Empire's military administrative department and parliament never planned to give up on the experiment. They needed the experiment to continue and they needed it to succeed. There were signs that the United States was also conducting the same secret experiment on the other side of the ocean. The Huaxia Empire had been ahead of the United States in this experiment by more than 10 years, but they had suffered huge losses because of the sudden failure. Song Haichuan, who had led the experiment, had died on the spot. His daughter, Song Jining, had suffered a serious mental illness. The military representative, Senior Colonel Hua Guanyuan, had also died in the huge explosion in the laboratory. 4 soldiers from the Special Operations Forces had died in the line of duty with him. Their bodies had quickly been burned to ashes by the flames, and almost no remains had been found. According to military practice, if no bodies or remains could be found, they would be treated as missing. So Hua Guanyuan's family had been informed that he had gone missing. Bai Jini recalled the past and sighed faintly. She had hoped that Hua Guanyuan hadn't died. Unfortunately, the laboratory had been badly damaged by the fire. She knew that her wish would always be an extravagant hope. Bai Jini looked at Bai Changhui. "Third brother, let's go sit in the car. It's too cold outside." But their car was parked within the police line, and they didn't dare go any further. Bai Changhui pointed to a minivan driven by his subordinate. "Let's go sit here." Bai Jini wasn't picky about anything at the moment. All she wanted was to sit in the car and warm up. Hua Xiaoheng sat in his bulletproof car. It took him an entire hour to read the entire secret document. By then, Qinlai's surgery had been going on for 2.5 hours. Qinlai would be done with the surgery in another half an hour. He slowly opened the car door and calmly got out. He stood in front of the car and looked across the police line. Yin Shixiang came over and whispered. They got into the minivan. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and took out a cigarette from his trouser pocket. He lit it with a lighter and smoked in the cold wind. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini saw Hua Xiaoheng come out of the car and were about to get out when they saw him smoking again. They looked at each other and sat back down. They would go over after he finished smoking. Third brother, what do you think Hua Xiaoheng is doing? Does he think we won't have to take Song Jining away just because he's stalling? How childish. Bai Jini shook her head disapprovingly. He's just like his old man. They're both one-track minded. If his old man wasn't one-track minded, why didn't he want to marry you? Bai Changhui sneered. I suggest you get married quickly. After you get married, you can adopt one of the Bai family branches. He can be your son. Bai Jini's expression darkened. She shook her head. I don't want to marry him. At her age, marriage was no longer the most important thing to her. The experiment was the most important thing to her now. She made up her mind. After she took Song Jining away, she wouldn't care about Song Jining's life anymore. She would stimulate Song Jining's brain cells in the most exciting way possible. She would force Song Jining's memory back and repeat the most crucial set of data for her. She had more confidence in Song Jining than she did herself. After all, she had met Song Jining in school. That was when she realized what a real genius girl was. She had been called a genius girl for so many years, but she had been crushed by Song Jining in seconds. This is the second update of the day. Reminder for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Let me tell all of you, in order to avoid being censored, some settings have to be changed. I'll post the changed settings in the public section tomorrow, so all of you can take a look if you're interested. Dear readers, please chew on it one by one. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 226. 32. From a young age, Bai Jini had shown exceptional talent in her studies. She had skipped grades time and time again. She was only 16 when she entered university, and it only took her 3 years to graduate. It took her another 2 years to get her master's degree, and another 4 years to get her PhD in high-energy physics from the prestigious Princeton University. Her classmates, on the other hand, had to spend 4 years to get a bachelor's degree, 3 years to get a master's degree, and another 5 to 7 years to get a doctorate abroad. It would take a total of 12 to 14 years to achieve what Bai Jini had achieved in 9 years. However, during her PhD studies at Princeton, she was shocked by another girl from the Wuxia Empire. She wasn't the only one who was shocked. All the physics professors at Princeton were shocked. This girl was Song Jining. She had attended the Wuxia Empire's B University's physics department at the age of 15. She graduated at 17 and went straight to Princeton University for her PhD in high-energy physics. It only took her 3 years to get her master's and PhD in high-energy physics. Song Jining's undergraduate career had only taken 5 years, 4 years shorter than Bai Jini's 9 years. Bai Jini felt a little uncomfortable at the thought. She had also fought hard to get her older brother to help her during her PhD graduation. In the end, she had changed her birth certificate and household registration to make her age 4 years younger. In fact, she was already over 50 years old. After so many years, most of the people who knew her true age had already passed away. Now, except for the few closest brothers in the family, no one else knew about this matter. Bai Changhui looked at his watch. It's been more than an hour. That should be enough. Is he trying to stall for time? The two of them looked out the window in Hua Xiaoheng's direction. Hua Xiaoheng slowly smoked for another 15 minutes. He estimated that Qinlai would be done with the surgery in another 15 minutes. He tossed the cigarette butt and walked over to the police line. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini finally got out of the minivan. Major General Hua, you're a little slow at reading things. Bai Changhui shook his head. It's just over 20 pages of documents and you took almost an hour. Really? Sai, don't you soldiers always say, speed is precious? How did you become a slow doctor? Hua Xiaoheng smiled faintly and shook the document. This is too long and contains too much content. I have to take it back and study it carefully. Deputy Secretary General Bai, you don't mind, do you? Hee, this is a copy anyway. The original is locked in the safe. It's fine if you take it back and look at it a few more times. Bai Changhui's smile was benevolent and amiable. He looked like a completely different person from when he had first arrived, when he had tried to bully people with his power. Bai Jini grew impatient. She crossed her arms and said coldly, "Major General Hua, can you hand Song Jining over to me now?" Hua Xiaoheng casually handed the document to Yin Shixiang, who was next to him. He stood ramrod straight with his hands behind his back. Under the winter sun, his aura was as dazzling as the sun. No one could match him. Bai Jini turned her head slightly to avoid his gaze. "Why should I hand my mother over to you now?" Hua Xiaoheng looked straight ahead. "She's not a criminal. Can't she spend some time with her son?" Then don't say that to me. The documents from the Imperial Administration and the military clearly state that Song Jining will be under the joint custody of your father and I. Bai Jini had been waiting for Hua Xiaoheng to say this, so that she could use the document she had just shown him to suppress him. Hua Xiaoheng chuckled. "Is that so? Then may I ask if this document requires you to watch over my mother 24 hours a day, 365 days a year?" "Of course." Bai Jini had only said 2 words when she realized that she had fallen into Hua Xiaoheng's trap. Hua Xiaoheng immediately followed up. "I see. But in the past 16 years, did you really meet the requirements of this document for the time you spent caring for my mother? Director Bai, have you been by my mother's side 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for the past 16 years? Of course not." Bai Jini was speechless. She had her own heavy scientific research to do. How could she have the time to spend on a mental patient? Especially in the early years, when she had been confident that she could rebuild the experiment on her own. With her pride, she hadn't bothered to look for Song Jining to dig up experimental data. She hadn't expected that her experiment would go on for 16 years without any improvement. She had no choice but to go back to square one. She realized that Song Jining's role in the experiment couldn't be replaced by anyone else. Even Song Jining's own husband, Hua Guanchen, had been busy with military affairs all these years. He had been promoted from captain to general in the past 16 years. It was obvious that he hadn't had much time to spend with Song Jining when she was sick. This was actually a blessing in disguise for Song Jining. Otherwise, the situation might have been even worse. But Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't admit this. His expression suddenly changed. He said coldly, "Since you can't do this yourself, why are you stopping us from seeing each other? You also want to take my mother away from me when I finally have time off. May I ask Director Bai, what are your intentions?" Bai Jini narrowed her eyes. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng refused to return Song Jining, she became even more anxious. She was also afraid that Song Jining would suddenly recover. Wouldn't that mean that all her efforts would be for naught? She had worked so hard for 16 years. It wasn't just for someone else's benefit. "I was wrong in the past, but from now on, I will make sure that I stay by Song Jining's side 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, until she recovers." Bai Jini made up her mind. She wouldn't stop until she achieved her goal. "Wrong? Saying that you're wrong can make up for more than 10 years of illegal behavior?" Hua Xiaoheng raised his eyebrows. He pointed at the document in Yin Shixiang's hand. "Since this document has the force of law, then disobeying it is illegal. Bai Jini, if apologizing works against the law, why do we need a court? What do you want?" Bai Jini was shocked and angry. "I already said that I had no choice in the past. I'm also a physicist. I have my own career and my own mission. I have close cooperation with the military." "Cooperation? I think it's time to audit Director Bai's expenses over the years. I want to see how you spent all the research funds allocated by the military without any results." Hua Xiaoheng was in charge of external intelligence work, but he was no stranger to internal intelligence work either. Bai Changhui hated to hear the word audit. He frowned. Hua Xiaoheng's words were not unreasonable. He also didn't understand why Bai Jini was so insistent on Song Jining's return. Bai Jini glared at Hua Xiaoheng. She refused to back down. She sneered. "Major General Hua, don't try to change the subject. It's up to the court to decide whether I broke the law or not. But right now, I want to execute the requirements of this document immediately and bring Song Jining back." She gave Bai Changhui a look. Bai Changhui understood and waved behind him. The 100 or so special agents they had brought with them immediately raised their guns and aimed at Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang, who stood behind him. It seemed that Bai Changhui and Bai Jini had the advantage in numbers. The 2 security guards that Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang had brought with them were hiding in the shadows. Seeing that Bai Changhui was about to order the special agents to make their move, Hua Xiaoheng finally spoke into the microphone he was carrying. "Did you record everything?" Zhao Liang's voice came through the earpiece. Don't worry, Mr. Hua. We've recorded everything. In Zhao Liang's video, more than 100 armed special agents were pointing their guns at Hua Xiaoheng, who was standing near the police line. There was also a security guard wearing a mask. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. He pulled the gun from his waist and fired a shot into the air. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini trembled in fear. They shouted in unison, "What are you doing?" As soon as the gunshot was fired, the security guards emerged from their hiding places. They too pointed their guns at the special agents. This is the first time in the history of our country that the police and the special operations forces are going to fight each other. Hua Xiaoheng put the gun back into the gun case at his waist. He adjusted his white gloves. Are you sure you want to fight us? Bai Jini and Bai Changhui had brought the fully armed special agents with them. They had only wanted to scare Hua Xiaoheng. They hadn't expected Hua Xiaoheng to be so tough. Not only had he thought things through, but he was also well prepared. He wasn't afraid of a head-on fight. The special agents on the other side, listen up. Put down your guns and report to the police headquarters. The Special Operations Forces will send a letter to the police headquarters for questioning. We've already recorded a video of you pointing your guns at our Major General. We'll present it to the Senate, the military, and the Supreme Administration to demand justice. Yin Shixiang picked up the small megaphone and shouted at the other party. As soon as they heard that they had recorded a video, the special agents immediately put their guns away. The captain of the special agents came to Bai Changhui's side and whispered anxiously, "Deputy Secretary General Bai, our deputy chief said he would do you a favor. He never said he would help you fight these soldiers. We can't interfere in this situation. Please forgive us, but we have to go." After he finished speaking, he turned to his subordinates and said, "Retreat. Get in the cars. Report to the headquarters." More than 100 SWAT officers immediately boarded their police cars in a well-trained manner and left the Special Operations Forces headquarters. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini were the only ones left, along with their respective drivers and 2 cars. One of the cars had already been shot through, and the only one left was the minivan. The howling cold wind blew, stirring up the dust on the ground. The branches that had lost all their leaves rustled. The sun was covered by clouds and the sky was dark. The weather was getting colder. Hua Xiaoheng received a call from Chen Lai in the middle of the confrontation. "Mr. Hua, the surgery is a success. If there are no accidents, Mrs. Song should be awake in a week." This was the first update of 3,000 words. Keep asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. The second update of the day was still at 7 o'clock p.m. So don't be a fan of literature. Catching up on new updates every day is the most fun part of reading online novels. Chapter 227. Chen Lai's surgery was finally over, 10 minutes earlier than expected. Hua Xiaoheng breathed a sigh of relief. He was now even more at ease with Bai Changhui and Bai Jini. He raised his white-gloved right hand and waved. The armed guards immediately retreated to their hiding place. Bai Changhui and Bai Jini immediately felt less pressured. "What do you think? Have you thought it through? What good will it do you to go against the administration and the military? You climbed to the rank of Major General at such a young age, yet you don't cherish it." Bai Changhui began to use his usual carrot-and-stick tactics against Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng listened to him calmly, then said coolly, "I can return those words to you." "What do you mean?" Bai Jini was extremely impatient. She had always been obsessed with scientific research. Although the crucial experiment had not yielded results, she had achieved many successes in other areas. Otherwise, she would not have become the director of the Institute of High-Energy Physics. She had been in academia for so many years, and with the protection of the Bai family, she was not as well versed in the ways of the world as her brothers. Her temper was not difficult to control. She had waited for so long without achieving her goal. She was in a terrible mood. Hua Xiaoheng still did not look at her. He only said to Bai Changhui, "Deputy Secretary General Bai, I stand by what I said. I'm on vacation to visit my family and spend a few days with my mother. You can look it up. What law says I can't do that?" "But that document." Bai Jini rubbed her hands anxiously and walked towards the police line. "It says I'm responsible for this. You'd better wait for the court summons." Hua Xiaoheng finally turned his gaze to Bai Jini. His eyes were piercingly cold, devoid of any warmth. "Director Bai, we need to settle the score for the past 16 years. He turned abruptly and shouted, "Anyone who crosses the police line without a permit will be shot on the spot." Bai Jini did not stop in time and tried to run forward. Just as she reached the police line, Yin Shixiang casually fired 2 shots at her. The silenced handgun made a popping sound and splashed dirt around Bai Jini's feet. Bai Jini screamed and fell to the ground. Her legs were too weak to stand. Director Bai, military orders must be obeyed. Don't make things difficult for us. Yin Shixiang warned the Bai siblings with a weird smile. Bai Changhui knew they couldn't take Song Jining away this time. He hurried over to Bai Jini and pulled her up. Forget it, Jini, let's go home. No, I don't want it. I'm taking Song Jining with me. What? Bai Jini screamed hysterically as if she had gone mad. Bai Changhui couldn't take it anymore and slapped her across the face. Jini, wake up. We can talk when we get back. Don't embarrass yourself here. Bai Jini was stunned by Bai Changhui's slap. She covered her face and stared at Bai Changhui, speechless. Take her away, Bai Changhui ordered his subordinates, pointing at Bai Jini. Go home now. Hua Xiaoheng suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmly walked to his bulletproof car. Fan Jian started the car and drove to the official residence. The second company of guards they had brought with them rode their motorcycles that were parked in a well-hidden parking lot and followed behind Hua Xiaoheng's bulletproof sedan. Good morning, Chief. The guards standing at the entrance saluted Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng raised his arm and strode inside. He looked straight ahead as he walked through the living room to the suite that had been specially prepared for the operating room. Gu Nianji was in operating room A, and Song Jining was in operating room B. He glanced at Gu Nianji as he passed by operating room A. She was still lying in the operating chair, her face pale and her lips pale to a pink hue. Yi Zitan came out of operating room B with a surgical tray and stopped when she saw Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiao, the surgery is over. She looked at the unconscious Gu Nianji and praised her. Nianji was amazing and brave. She donated a lot of bone marrow to Mrs. Song. Hua Xiaoheng grunted and asked, why isn't she awake yet? Does it hurt? Hua Xiaoheng looked at Gu Nianji's face and thought it was strangely pale. Yi Zitan smiled awkwardly and said quietly, of course it hurts when the bone marrow is extracted. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes immediately sharpened. Didn't Chen Lai say it wouldn't hurt after the anesthetic? We used anesthetic gas, but it wasn't a complete anesthetic. She woke up during the second extraction. Yi Zitan didn't dare lie to Hua Xiaoheng. She didn't even dare to hide a word from him. She had been nervous and blurted out everything, including Chen Lai's instruction not to tell Hua Xiaoheng everything. Hua Xiaoheng was slightly moved. He glanced at Gu Nianji again before walking to operating room B. In operating room B, Chen Lai stood alone in front of the computer and entered various observation data. He only had to wait for the follow-up in a week to know Song Jining's recovery. He looked up to see Hua Xiaoheng standing silently in front of him and quickly forced a smile. Hua Xiao, it's done? Hua Xiaoheng nodded. His expression was a bit gloomy. Didn't you say it wouldn't hurt after the anesthetic? Chen Lai immediately understood that Yi Zitan had told Hua Xiaoheng the truth. The silly girl. Chen Lai wanted to laugh bitterly. He forced a smile and pushed his round glasses up his nose bridge in an attempt to change the subject. Hua Xiao, it's a miracle. Nianji's bone marrow matched Mrs. Song's almost flawlessly. There was no rejection at all. I'm already 99% confident in this surgery. Hua Xiaoheng snorted and leaned forward. He placed both hands on the table where Chen Lai's computer was and said coldly, Chen Lai, you can't build the success of the surgery on lying to others. Chen Lai was speechless. He felt a bit guilty. The bone marrow extraction was very, very painful, and for the sake of the surgery he hadn't used general anesthesia. In addition, the operation required bone marrow extraction not just once or twice, but many times. It was indeed not very kind. But he had kept it from Hua Xiaoheng for his own good. Was he going to give up the surgery just because it would hurt and they couldn't use complete anesthesia? Of course not. He and Hua Xiaoheng had prepared for this surgery for 6 years. He would never give up no matter what. Now he was talking to him about whether it would hurt or not. He must be out of his mind. Hua Xiao, be careful. Where's your decisiveness? Where's your cold-heartedness? Chen Lai rolled his eyes at Hua Xiaoheng and looked down to pack his things. He said coldly, also I wasn't lying. Nianji isn't a child. She's much smarter than you think. She knows what's important. She's very afraid of pain. Hua Xiaoheng said instinctively. He straightened his back, his posture a bit stiff. I promised her that it wouldn't hurt. It didn't hurt at first, but the anesthesia wore off. You weren't wrong. Chen Lai hummed a tune as he brushed Hua Xiaoheng off. Okay, go check on Mrs. Song. Dr. Yi and I will stay here today to observe Mrs. Song's condition. I'll be completely relieved when she makes it through tonight without any complications. As long as there was no rejection, Song Jinning's body would automatically begin repairing the damaged genes once Gu Nianji's hematopoietic stem cells were absorbed by her body. Of course, this process couldn't be completed in a day or two. It would take at least a week for Song Jinning to fully wake up. Wu Xiaoheng glanced at him before walking to the operating chair Song Jinning was lying on. Her complexion looked much better than Gu Nianji's. Her skin was rosy and delicate, and her features were stunningly beautiful. 16 years seemed to have frozen in time. There were no signs of aging on her at all. Wu Xiaoheng looked at Song Jinning with a complicated expression. He reached out to adjust the blanket covering her. Take Nianji away. She doesn't have to stay here. She'll wake up in a bit. If she's in pain, she'll feel better if you're by her side. Qinlai smiled as he suggested. He looked like he really wanted to atone for his mistakes. Wu Xiaoheng ignored him and looked at Song Jinning silently. He left room B and went to room A to carry Gu Nianji horizontally to his bedroom. He had just placed Gu Nianji on the bed when she woke up. She tugged at his sleeve and whimpered, "Hu Xiao, I'm in pain. Can you please comfort me?" Her eyes were shockingly bright. Her large eyes were filled with tears, but no tears fell. She looked at Wu Xiaoheng quietly. Wu Xiaoheng was speechless. He couldn't refuse such a request. He sighed and climbed onto the bed as well. He held her in his arms and patted her on the back. "Be good. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt." This was the second update of the day. Reminder for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Some settings had been changed, such as the name. He thought about it and decided not to list it out. It wouldn't be good if people used it as a reference. Dear readers, please chew on it one by one. Chapter 228. Gu Nianji leaned into Wu Xiaoheng's embrace contentedly and felt the strength of his large, warm palms caressing her back. She exhaled and closed her eyes, as if the piercing pain in her body had gradually faded away. Of course, bone marrow extraction was painful. The phrase bone-deep pain wasn't an exaggeration, it was the truth. Wu Xiaoheng looked down to see Gu Nianji lying in his arms in a loose white surgical gown. Her neck was lowered and her slender, delicate neck was as white as cream. "Where does it hurt? Should I ask Qinlai for painkillers?" Wu Xiaoheng asked quietly. His voice was very magnetic and resonated with the listener's heartstrings. Gu Nianji closed her eyes and snuggled quietly in Wu Xiaoheng's arms. After a while, she smiled and said, "I'll feel much better if you coax me." She looked up from Wu Xiaoheng's arms and met his eyes. "If you kiss me, it won't hurt at all." Wu Xiaoheng saw that her eyes were bright and her cheeks were flushed. She didn't look as pitiful as before. His heart softened and he lowered his head to kiss her forehead. He whispered, "It really doesn't hurt?" His feelings were extremely complicated. He felt guilty, uneasy, touched, and pitiful. Gu Nianji glanced at Wu Xiaoheng's apologetic gaze. Her big, black eyes turned, and she understood Wu Xiaoheng's intentions. She didn't want Wu Xiaoheng to feel like he owed her. She was willing to donate her bone marrow to save Song Jinning. Gu Nianji giggled and said playfully, "Hu Xiao, you weren't tricked by me, were you?" Wu Xiaoheng was speechless. "I was just flirting with you. Look at how scared you are. I was just pretending to be in pain so you would agree to all my unreasonable requests." Gu Nianji's body was a bit stiff, but she forced herself to be in the most natural position and said slyly, "It really doesn't hurt?" Wu Xiaoheng asked again with some suspicion. He reached out and wrapped his arms around Gu Nianji's slender waist. "It really doesn't hurt." Gu Nianji shook her head. "Although it might hurt for others, I'm not an ordinary person. When I'm strong, even I'm afraid of myself." The corners of Wu Xiaoheng's lips curved slightly. His large hands slowly moved up from the back of her waist to cover her exposed neck. At this moment he was slightly stunned. His hands were slippery and he was sweating profusely. Even his neck was covered in sweat. Why was he sweating so much? Wu Xiaoheng's palm rubbed the back of Gu Nianji's neck a few times, then gradually moved down to the inside of her surgical gown. Gu Nianji suddenly became alert, but it was already too late. Wu Xiaoheng's hand was already tightly pressed against her naked back. Her back was covered in cold sweat from the pain. To be precise, her entire body was soaked as if she had just been fished out of the water. The smile on Wu Xiaoheng's face faded, and his eyes deepened. His gaze was fierce and angry as he looked down at Gu Nianji. His large hand swiped viciously across her smooth, naked back as he sneered. "Doesn't it hurt?" Then where did the cold sweat come from? Her entire body was covered in cold sweat from the pain, and her surgical gown was drenched in sweat. How dare she say it didn't hurt? As soon as Hua Xiaoheng exerted force, Gu Nianji couldn't bear it anymore. With a muffled groan, she gripped the front of Hua Xiaoheng's shirt tightly and bit her lower lip hard. The pain was overwhelming. Her vision turned black, and even breathing made her spasming in pain. Tell me if it hurts. Who taught you to endure it yourself? Hua Xiaoheng's low voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. He was furious when he thought about how Gu Nianji had tried to bluff her way out of it. Pursing his lips tightly, he undid the straps on the back of Gu Nianji's surgical gown. Holding her arms, he removed the gown from her body. He didn't expect her to be naked under the surgical gown. Hua Xiaoheng's expression darkened. He hastily pulled the blanket over to cover Gu Nianji. Getting up from the bed, he said sternly, "Lie down and don't move. I'll go get some water for you to wipe." She was sweating all over. How could she sleep? She would fall sick if she covered herself with the blanket to stop sweating. Gu Nianji's heart was also thumping wildly. Her body didn't seem to hurt much anymore because she was extremely embarrassed. She didn't even have the strength to resist when Hua Xiaoheng hurriedly took off her surgical gown. Although Hua Xiaoheng immediately pulled the blanket over her body, Gu Nianji couldn't help but wonder if he saw it. Was he satisfied with her body? Or did it not affect him at all? This kind of fantasy distracted the pain, and color quickly returned to Gu Nianji's small face. When Hua Xiaoheng took off Gu Nianji's surgical gown, he thought there would at least be underwear or something underneath. He didn't expect there to be nothing. His face darkened. He went to the bathroom to look for a long time but couldn't find a basin to hold water in. He could only take a towel and soak it in hot water before wringing it dry. Taking it back to the bedroom, he patted Gu Nianji, who was wrapped in the blanket. "Can you wipe yourself?" Gu Nianji nodded and gritted her teeth. "Yes." Hua Xiaoheng looked at her silently without moving and waited for her to reach under the blanket for the towel. In the end, Gu Nianji couldn't lift her arm no matter how hard she tried. The pain also took a lot of energy. She was already exhausted from the pain of having her bone marrow extracted several times today. She couldn't even lift a finger. She was lucky that her body was special. If it had been anyone else, they would have died from the pain. "What can I do? You're still trying to be brave." Hua Xiaoheng sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the blanket. "Lie on your stomach." Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng, unable to move. Her eyes began to mist up again. A pair of misty, watery eyes stared at him. Hua Xiaoheng's heart sank again. She couldn't even turn over. How much pain was this? In that instant, Hua Xiaoheng wished that he was the one who had his bone marrow extracted over and over again. He got up and went back to the bathroom to hang the towel back, then brought back a large dry bath towel. Sitting back on the edge of the bed, he lifted the blanket and pulled Gu Nianji out. He closed his eyes and quickly wrapped the towel around her, then wiped her sweat. The large, fluffy cotton bath towel was especially absorbent. Gu Nianji was quickly wiped clean. She sat in Hua Xiaoheng's arms with the towel wrapped around her, her head lowered in embarrassment. Seeing her like this, Hua Xiaoheng felt that he had been too strict with her. He could only cough and tease her with a smile. "Didn't you say you were going to seduce me? Why are you so shy after just a little?" Gu Nianji was speechless. Was he complaining that she hadn't seduced him to the end? Gu Nianji panicked and found that she could move again. Although the pain still filled her limbs and bones, it wasn't as fierce and stiff as before. She held the ends of the towel with both hands and looked up at Hua Xiaoheng. She sighed and smiled. "Hua Xiao, you said it. Of course I can still seduce you." As she spoke, she slowly let go of her hands, and the ends of the towel spread to the sides. Her fair breasts were exposed and her pink head was exposed. Seeing this, Hua Xiaoheng quietly reached out and held her hands. He pulled the towel around her to cover her breasts. "You're like this, no matter how I seduce you, it's useless. Let's wait until you're better." Gu Nianji's face turned completely red. Her face was even redder than the sunset. Even her neck was blushing. This was so embarrassing. It was useless. Gu Nianji didn't feel the pain anymore, but her head hurt. She mumbled, "I'm tired. I want to sleep." Hua Xiaoheng pulled the blanket over her and pulled the towel out from under the blanket. He pulled the blanket over her and put her on the bed. "Go to sleep. I'll ask Chenlai if she needs to take her medicine." Gu Nianji nodded and closed her eyes to sleep. She was really tired and just wanted to have a good sleep. When a person's body was injured, sleep was the most natural way to repair itself. That night, Hua Xiaoheng didn't leave Gu Nianji's bedroom. That night, Chenlai and Yi Zitan didn't leave the door of operating room B. They nervously measured Song Jinning's various data. From their monitoring, Song Jinning's various indicators began to change dramatically 6 hours after receiving the bone marrow injection. On the monitor, the red numbers kept rising. Each indicator dazzled Qinlai, and his eyes shone with excitement. This regenerative ability was simply too amazing. Even though he had been mentally prepared, this speed and effect still greatly exceeded his expectations. In that instant, Qinlai understood why Gunyanji's body hadn't been weakened after being hit by H3AB7's viral weapon. Instead, it had formed antibodies in her body. This was the first night watch. I'm begging for recommendation votes on Monday. Dear friends, please give me your recommendation votes. The second night watch was still at 7 p.m. Chapter 229. Yi Zitan stayed by Song Jinning's operating chair to look after her. Qinlai was responsible for recording the data. Qinlai was overjoyed at the incredible data, but he carefully downloaded it and saved it separately. He didn't put it in Song Jinning's personal file. Just like the H3AB7 antivirus weapon, Gunyanji's name didn't appear in the military records. Only Qinlai and Hua Xiaoheng knew about this. Gunyanji herself didn't know about her special constitution. Gunyanji's importance to the military was because of her background. Hua Xiaoheng and Qinlai didn't want anyone to find out about Gunyanji's special constitution. If those people found out, Gunyanji could only be a lab rat and be locked in a lab for secret experiments. Hua Xiaoheng and Qinlai had a tacit understanding about this and chose to keep it a secret for Gunyanji. They had been protecting Gunyanji ever since they discovered her special constitution 6 years ago. Hua Xiaoheng didn't even go home and let Bai Jini and the others focus on Song Jinning. They didn't notice Gunyanji's special constitution. They hoped Gunyanji could help save Song Jinning, but that was all. Asking Gunyanji to help save Song Jinning was also with her consent. Qinlai thought that Hua Xiaoheng would let her save his mother regardless of whether Gunyanji agreed or not. If Gunyanji didn't want to, Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't force her. He never wanted to force Gunyanji to save his mother, nor did he want her to contribute to the Huaxia Empire. He was a soldier and could sacrifice everything for the country, including his life. But Gunyanji wasn't. He wasn't even sure if Gunyanji was from the Huaxia Empire. Of course, he couldn't make the decision for Gunyanji and make her sacrifice everything. That went against his principles as a man and his beliefs as a soldier. Hua Xiaoheng didn't sleep all night. He sat alone on the massage sofa next to the bed and checked on Gunyanji from time to time as he worked on his computer. Gunyanji did have a fever late at night. But it was only a low fever and nothing serious. Qinlai came to check and didn't even give her medicine. He only said Gunyanji could handle it. Hua Xiaoheng checked Gunyanji's forehead every 15 minutes to make sure her temperature wasn't rising. Gunyanji didn't sleep well. The surgery in the afternoon had almost caused her to faint from the pain, but in order to prevent Hua Xiaoheng from feeling more pressure and guilt, she chose not to make a sound. She liked him, loved him, and hoped that he loved her too. However, she didn't want him to be with her out of guilt. However, the pain still left a mark on her body, causing her brain to be constantly in a state of tension. In the middle of the night, when she had a fever, she was immersed in a long-lost nightmare. Pain was everywhere. Someone was chasing her. She cried for her mother and hid everywhere. In her dreams, a woman's blurry face would appear beside her from time to time. It seemed that the woman was the object of her greatest desire when she was young, but when she ran towards her, she was ruthlessly pushed away by the woman. She opened her mouth in her sleep, wanting to call that woman, but found that she couldn't. In the end, she could only softly call out, "Daddy." Hua Xiaoheng suddenly looked up at Gunyanji, who was lying on the bed. In the dim night light, her little face was snow white, and her forehead was covered in sweat. Her fever seemed to have subsided. Hua Xiaoheng took a towel to wipe Gunyanji's sweat. Gunyanji was still whispering, "Daddy, uncle." Hua Xiaoheng's hand paused. He looked at Gunyanji deeply, then picked up the towel again and tapped her forehead. He suddenly whispered, "Nyenji, what's your father's name?" The Special Operations Forces had trained on how to induce a confession from a person who talked in their sleep. This method was very effective, and it was extremely secretive. After the other party woke up, she didn't remember being induced to confess while talking in her sleep. Gunyanji had a nightmare, and her body still felt the pain from the surgery during the day. This pain also stimulated her brain. When her mind wasn't focused, it was easy for her to talk to Hua Xiaoheng in her sleep. "Daddy. Daddy is daddy." Hua Xiaoheng's heart suddenly skipped a few beats, then began to beat even more violently. His steady voice trembled slightly. Then what's his name? Gu Nianji didn't reply. It seemed that she had fallen asleep again. It seemed like it was the same as before. This time there was no result. Hua Xiaoheng moved the towel away. Just as he was about to get up, he heard Gu Nianji say softly, Xiangwen. Xiangwen? Gu Xiangwen? Hua Xiaoheng took a deep breath. He had finally found an important clue about Gu Nianji's background. Which two words are they? Xiang as in auspicious, Wen as in culture, Gu Nianji answered obediently. She was as obedient in her sleep as she was awake. Hua Xiaoheng's brows relaxed. It would be easier to investigate now that he had a name. When the time came, he would go to the Wuxia Empire's Administrative Department's Household Registration Management Agency to conduct a nationwide search. He would find all the people named Gu Xiangwen, and then test their DNA one by one. Hua Xiaoheng suppressed his racing heart. He almost couldn't believe what he had just heard. After 6 years, they had finally come into contact with the tip of the iceberg of Gu Nianji's background. What about your uncle? What's his name? Hua Xiaoheng asked softly again. Gu Nianji shut her mouth and didn't speak again. Hua Xiaoheng asked a few more times, but Gu Nianji didn't respond. She was actually so vigilant even in her sleep. Perhaps if the pain today hadn't been too intense, Gu Nianji wouldn't have lost her mind so easily, right? Hua Xiaoheng stood in the middle of the bedroom, lost in thought. From what Gu Nianji had said, her father should be from the Wuxia Empire. But they had investigated for 6 years and almost all the relevant people in the Wuxia Empire, but they hadn't found anyone with similar DNA to Gu Nianji. They hadn't even found a distant relative. How could Gu Nianji's parents still exist in the Wuxia Empire? They had all thought that Gu Nianji wasn't from the Wuxia Empire, but Gu Nianji had been tricked into confessing when she was talking in her sleep. What she said at that time must be absolutely true and couldn't be faked. It might even stay in the deepest recesses of the person's memory. Sometimes even these people might not remember when they were awake. For example, Gu Nianji's memory loss before she was 12 was the best example. Therefore, using a confession in her sleep as bait could summon things from the deepest recesses of her memory. No matter how ridiculous and inconceivable her answer was, there was no doubt that it was true. If Gu Nianji's answer was true, then there must have been a problem with their previous investigation. But he really hadn't expected Gu Nianji to be from the Wuxia Empire. Hua Xiaoheng composed himself and put the towel back in the bathroom. He returned to the massage chair on the sofa and continued working. At 2 in the morning, Zhao Liangzi sent him a message. Mr. Hua, General Hua is here. Do you want to see him? My father is here? Hua Xiaoheng looked up from his laptop. What's he doing here? I don't know. I've arrived at the entrance of your official residence and am getting off the car. Zhao Liangzi looked at the surveillance footage on the computer screen and reported the news to Hua Xiaoheng, then shared the video with Hua Xiaoheng. On the laptop screen in front of him, a black bulletproof car was parked in front of the official residence. The car door opened and Hua Guanchen, dressed in casual clothes, stepped out of the car. He folded his arms in front of him and looked sharply at Hua Xiaoheng's mansion. Hua Xiaoheng pursed his lips tightly and watched the video for a while before saying to Zhao Liangzi, "Open the door and let him in." With that, he turned off his laptop and got up to check on Gu Nianji. Seeing that her fever had subsided, he turned to leave. She walked steadily from the bedroom on the second floor to the living room on the first floor. Hua Guanchen was already waiting there. This is the second watch. Begging for recommendation votes and monthly votes on Monday. Dear friends, hurry up and vote for me. Good night, dear friends. Chapter 230. Hua Xiaoheng strolled over leisurely, his emotions unreadable. Hua Guanchen narrowed his eyes and studied his son for a long time. He had to admit that although Hua Xiaoheng was only 28 years old, he was so shrewd that even he couldn't figure him out. General Hua. Because Hua Xiaoheng was still in his military uniform, he put his legs together and raised his hands in a standard military salute when he walked up to Hua Guanchen. Hua Guanchen nodded and sat down on the sofa. He pointed at the sofa opposite him. Sit. He made himself at home. Hua Xiaoheng sat down noncommittally. His posture was ramrod straight and he sat upright. The expression on his face was very calm and composed. General Hua, why are you here so late at night? Hua Xiaoheng waved. Guards, serve tea. An orderly brought a cup of tea for Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng, and placed it on the coffee table between them. Hua Guanchen wasn't in the mood for tea, but he still picked up the cup and made a drinking gesture. He looked sharply at Hua Xiaoheng and waved his hand to dismiss the orderlies in the living room. Only the father and son were left in the large living room, sipping tea. I heard you rejected Aunt Bai's request to not take your mother away? Huo Guanshan's expression darkened. His tone was heavy. Are you done? Your mother is sick, how could she endure all this? You're already so old, how can you still be so reckless? If my mother could survive 16 years under Director Bai and my father's supervision, then she could endure all this. Huo Xiaoheng's handsome face was Song Jinning's shadow. Only his rigid facial features were identical to Huo Guanshan's. How dare you? Huo Guanshan slammed his cup on the coffee table. Do you know you've broken both the law and military law? Do you really want to go against the Bai family? Huo Xiaoheng nodded expressionlessly and said calmly, who does the Bai family think they are? Do they deserve to go against me? My father might be afraid of them, but I'm not. Huo Guanshan was furious. He stood up in anger and pointed at Huo Xiaoheng. You're ignorant. Do you know how powerful the Bai family is? How many members of the Bai family were scattered in different departments? If they really want to deal with you, next year on this day you'll be spending the new year in prison. Huo Xiaoheng slowly put down the teacup but did not stand up. He only placed his hands on his knees and straightened his back. He looked up at Huo Guanshan and said, Father, you've probably knelt for too long and don't know what it's like to stand anymore. What was so scary about the Bai family? Right now, the ones who should be afraid should be the Bai family, not us. That was why they were frantically grabbing onto Song Jinning as their last hope. No matter how well-mannered Huo Guanshan was, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. How dare you speak to me like that? Believe it or not, I will send you to the military court. If I have to go to military court just to speak to my father, then from now on, I won't call you father anymore. I'll call you General Hua. Huo Xiaoheng unleashed a flurry of punches, trapping Huo Guanshan in one move after another. Huo Guanshan froze and remembered that when Huo Xiaoheng said he couldn't stand up after kneeling for too long, he had said father, not General Hua. When he called him father, it was a father-son relationship. When he called General Hua, it was a superior and subordinate relationship. There was a fundamental difference here. Huo Guanshan blushed slightly. Thankfully, his skin was dark brown, so even if he was slightly red, it was completely unnoticeable. All right. Since we're father and son, of course I won't hold it against you. Huo Guanshan waved his hand and pretended to be magnanimous. But you still have to hand over your mother. I'll take her back myself, okay? Your Aunt Bai has good intentions. Seeing that your mother's condition is getting better, why do you have to hold up your mother's treatment just because of a moment of anger? Of course I'm not holding up a moment of anger. Huo Xiaoheng said calmly and lowered his head to take a sip of tea. I haven't been home for 6 years. This year, General Ji gave me a special annual leave to reunite with my mother. Father, as her son, can't I reunite with my mother? Is my mother not a soldier but a criminal? Huo Guanshan was speechless. He stared blankly at Huo Xiaoheng. After 6 years, the quiet young man had become a major general who would not bat an eyelid even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. He was only 28 years old, but he had already become a major general. He was even more accomplished than his uncle Huo Guanyuan. Huo Guanshan was proud of his son, but he was also unwilling to be suppressed by his son. He thought for a moment and made a conciliatory gesture. How about this? You send your mother back and you go back as well. You stay at home. That way your Aunt Bai will have nothing to say. My mother had no sisters. Director Bai hasn't married father yet. Father, please don't call me Aunt Bai anymore. It'll make people laugh. Alright, enough with the nonsense. Huo Guanshan didn't want to talk about this anymore. Are you not willing to hand over your mother? Do you know the consequences? What consequences? Tomorrow, the military and the Ministry of Science and Technology may send people to ask for her. Huo Guanshan curled his fingers and tapped the coffee table in front of him. Do you still dare to not hand her over then? I already said that my mother is a soldier, not a criminal. Why would they ask for her from me? When my vacation ends, I will naturally send my mother back. Father, did you come to me so late at night just to separate us? Huo Xiaoheng wasn't as forceful now because there was no need. All he wanted was a week. This week was crucial. No matter who came, he wouldn't allow them to take Song Jinning away. Really? You'll send your mother back after your vacation ends? Huo Guanshan was suspicious. You're not lying to us, are you? Xiaoheng, I'm warning you, don't ruin your own future. What's the point of lying? Huo Xiaoheng crossed his arms and stretched his long legs against the couch. He wasn't as serious as before. I always keep my word. All right. Hua Guanchen looked at him deeply and suddenly said, "It's exactly as they said. If that's the case then I have no choice." He suddenly changed his tone and words. Hua Xiaoheng immediately became alert. "Father, what do you mean by that?" "Nothing. It's actually reasonable for you to want to reunite with your mother. I think even if they make a fuss to the military no one will care." Hua Guanchen sighed and glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. "But..." He changed the topic and looked upstairs. "Where's the little girl you brought back?" "Which little girl?" Alarm bells went off in Hua Xiaoheng's head. He felt slightly uneasy. "Gunyanji, of course." Hua Guanchen looked at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile and saw that he was still unmoved. He muttered to himself, could it be that Jialan was wrong? Gunyanji wasn't that important to Hua Xiaoheng? "What's wrong with Nianji? She's still sleeping." Hua Xiaoheng stood up and straightened his uniform. "If there's nothing else, father, please go back. We'll talk tomorrow." "Xiaoheng, don't change the subject." Hua Guanchen took 2 steps outside. Gunyanji's background is unknown. She didn't pass the necessary security checks, so she can't stay at the Special Operations Forces headquarters, which has the highest security requirements. I'm afraid there's a risk of leaks. Director Liao of the police headquarters is waiting outside the cordon to take Gunyanji away and lock her up in isolation. Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat. He instantly understood. These people couldn't take Song Jining directly from him, so they were using Gunyanji to force Hua Xiaoheng to make a choice. He could either let them take Song Jining away or sacrifice Gunyanji. Hua Xiaoheng didn't know who came up with this idea to Hua Guanchen and Bai Jini, but the seemingly simple idea was extremely effective. It went straight to the heart of the matter and seemed to understand Hua Xiaoheng very well. At this time it was a competition of who could keep their cool. His expression didn't change, but the aura around him became extremely solemn. Police headquarters? They don't have the right to take Nianji away. Hua Xiaoheng dusted his sleeves. Let them find General Ji and Speaker Long and get the joint authorization from the Supreme Military Council and the Senate to take Nianji away. I won't see you out. This was the first night watch. Begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Dear friends, hurry up and vote for me. Today's second night watch was still at 7 p.m. P.S. Thank you to I Am Master Rashi for the Heshibi yesterday. Moi. Chapter 231. Haha, an orphan girl needs General Ji and Speaker Long to show the joint authorization from the Supreme Military Council and the Senate? Xiaoheng, are you going to betray Gunyanji's importance just like that? Hua Guanchen shook his head and looked at Hua Xiaoheng's slightly stiff body with interest. Hua Xiaoheng's mind raced, but he didn't fall for Hua Guanchen's trap. He turned around and said nonchalantly, "Is that strange? As everyone knows, the military is after her family, and she's the only lead, so her importance is undeniable." Hua Guanchen froze and looked at Hua Xiaoheng solemnly. "Are you sure? Just because of her background, you need the joint authorization from General Ji and Speaker Long to take her away? You can fool me with that, but if you want to fool others, especially the enormous Bai family, you better think of another reason." He stood up and hesitated before asking Hua Xiaoheng, "Your mother, is she really okay?" "Don't worry, father. She's fine here. She's already asleep and you'll be able to see her when my vacation ends." Hua Xiaoheng nodded and his attitude softened. "All right then, I'm leaving." Hua Guanchen picked up his hat and walked out of the house. Hua Xiaoheng didn't see him out. He stood in the middle of the living room with his hands behind his back and watched him leave. Hua Guanchen's bodyguards and personal secretary were in the car outside the official residence and didn't follow him in. He came in alone. After Hua Guanchen left, Hua Xiaoheng sat back on the sofa and thought about what Hua Guanchen had just said. Hua Guanchen had actually revealed 2 of the Bai family's future plans to Hua Xiaoheng. One was that they were targeting Gunyanji and wanted to attack Wei to save Zhao. They wanted to see what Hua Xiaoheng would choose. If Hua Xiaoheng chose to give up Gunyanji to protect Song Jining, it meant that Hua Xiaoheng was plotting something against Song Jining. It was very likely to have a lot to do with Song Jining's recovery, because they also knew that Hua Xiaoheng was not the kind of person who would act on impulse. But if Hua Xiaoheng chose to give up Song Jining to protect Gunyanji, then they would have to re-evaluate Gunyanji's importance. Regardless of how important it was to the Huaxia Empire's military or to Hua Xiaoheng, it would be a devastating blow to Hua Xiaoheng if outsiders found out. For so many years, Hua Xiaoheng had always been a war machine with no weaknesses in the eyes of outsiders. He didn't care about his sick mother and hadn't entered the house for 6 years. In the eyes of outsiders, he was completely emotionless. He had personally led teams to participate in many overseas activities and had fought with foreign special forces countless times. Not once had he failed, which further showed that he was a decisive and ruthless person. However, if he chose Gu Nianji and gave up on Song Jining this time, it meant that Hua Xiaoheng had a weakness. If outsiders saw through this, it would be a fatal blow to Hua Xiaoheng. Another action was that they had mobilized the police headquarters. The police couldn't go against the military, but they could deal with ordinary people, such as a young girl like Gu Nianji. Hadn't Bai Changhui and Bai Jini arrived with over 100 SWAT officers in the afternoon? It could be seen that the Bai family's influence in the police headquarters was not small. Not long after Hua Guanchen left, Hua Xiaoheng heard Zhao Liang's voice in his earpiece. "Mr. Hua, Commissioner Liao from the police headquarters is here with a pass. He wants to see you at the entrance of the official residence." Hua Xiaoheng grunted. "Tell him to wait, I still have something to do." He sat alone on the sofa and pondered for a long time. It wasn't until the sun had risen that he got up from the sofa and returned to his bedroom. Gu Nianji was still asleep. Hua Xiaoheng bent down to touch her head. He discovered that her fever was gone, but there was still a slight sheen of sweat on her forehead. He didn't know how much sweat was left on her body. He thought about it and went out to call Yi Zieten over. "Dr. Yi, can you help Nianji wipe down her body and change her clothes? Her fever has subsided but she still can't move." Yi Zieten nodded sympathetically. "I know. Extracting bone marrow is so painful. She must have suffered greatly." He then praised her. "But Nianji's health is really good. A normal person would have died a long time ago. I can't believe she was able to endure it without making a sound." Hua Xiaoheng turned his head away and walked out without saying anything. He went to the bathroom in the guest room to take a shower. After washing up, he came out to have breakfast with Chen Lai. Chen Lai's eyes seemed to be spinning. He grabbed Hua Xiaoheng's sleeve and said dreamily, "Hua Xiao, this is bad. This is really bad. What is it?" Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him. "Let's talk inside." They walked into the highly confidential operating room B. Song Jining lay there quietly. Her face was rosy and pale. She looked very well. "How is my mother's condition?" Hua Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and stood in front of Song Jining's operating chair. He looked at her silently for a while. Chen Lai took out a stack of printed data and whispered in Song Jining's direction. "Hua Xiao, look at this. I don't even dare put it in her medical records." Hua Xiaoheng took it and glanced at it. He didn't really understand the data. Chen Lai snatched it back like it was a treasure. His face was red and oily. "Be careful. That's my precious baby. I'm telling you, if you dare burn them again, I'll kill you." Hua Xiaoheng looked at him with disdain. "Speak human. What's going on? Speak human. It's Gu Nianji. Can you give her to me? You have a death wish." Hua Xiaoheng grabbed Chen Lai's collar. "Did you forget your military pledge? Fine, fine. I was just exaggerating. Don't you know how to use rhetoric? Soldiers are all illiterate." Chen Lai couldn't help cursing. Hua Xiaoheng was actually a straight-A student at the military academy. Of course, he couldn't compete in medical theory with a medical genius like Chen Lai. It was just like how Chen Lai wouldn't compete with Hua Xiaoheng in marksmanship or a 10-kilometer cross-country obstacle course. They were all experts in different fields. "I told you not to play to the gallery, but you didn't listen." Hua Xiaoheng tossed Chen Lai aside like a rag. "Hurry up and explain." "Let's put it this way. Gu Nianji's genetic repair was very effective." Chen Lai lowered his voice and enunciated each word carefully. "I've never seen such perfect genetic repair data." His expression was extremely serious, as if he had made a Nobel Prize-level discovery. Hua Xiaoheng's gaze was solemn. He folded his hands behind his back and looked at him without a word. Chen Lai pursed his lips, his round eyes looking at Hua Xiaoheng from under his round glasses. He patted Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder. "If you don't want people to capture her and take her to the lab to dissect every inch of her, you have to guard this secret carefully. But there are many people who know about this." Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms and paced around the room. "There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall. Do you think this information can be hidden? It's impossible to hide everything, so we can use a simpler piece of information to cover the truth." Chen Lai was the best at this. "I'll say that Song Jining's recovery had something to do with her bone marrow transplant. She originally had insufficient vital energy and was physically weak. As for her mental recovery, don't mention that." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "What else?" "As for why Gu Nianji wanted to transplant her bone marrow, that's easy to explain. Just say that their bone marrow types were compatible so it was accepted. You know, with so many bone marrow donors, it's especially difficult to find a bone marrow that doesn't have any rejection. At least no one in the medical world will question it if we say it this way. Chen-Lai spoke with confidence and considered all aspects of the situation. Huo Xiaoheng listened attentively for a long time before patting his shoulder. Okay, I'll listen to you. He then asked Chen-Lai, is my mother okay now? She's fine. She had a low fever in the middle of the night, but that's normal. After all, it's an external gene fusion and the immune system activates so there's a fever. She got better after that. Chen-Lai looked at Song Jining lying on the operating chair. His eyes were filled with awe and admiration. It wasn't the kind of admiration one would have for a beautiful woman, but the kind of admiration one would have for a great medical achievement. Then why hasn't she woken up yet? I said she wouldn't wake up until a week later. Right now, her body is repairing the damaged genes, so it's best for her to maintain this deep sleep. Chen-Lai took a deep breath. And I'll be here to personally watch over her this week. Didn't you say you could only stay for a day or two? Huo Xiaoheng turned to look at him. The data is too exciting, I don't want to go. Chen-Lai spread his hands and winked. Whatever. Huo Xiaoheng looked away and turned to walk out the door. He said to Zhao Yangzi through the headset, let Deputy Chief Liao in. When he returned to the living room, he saw the new Deputy Chief of the police headquarters, Deputy Chief Liao, sitting there in exhaustion. Huo Xiaoheng had left him hanging at the door for most of the night. It was a good show of force, and it had immediately dealt a blow to his arrogance. Seeing Huo Xiaoheng enter, Deputy Chief Liao no longer hesitated. He stood up and saluted. Major General Hua, I'm following orders from above. Please hand Gu Nianji over. Hand her over? Why do I have to hand her over? Huo Xiaoheng sat down on the sofa again. He pulled out his pistol from his waist and grabbed a gun wipe cloth. He wiped his pistol with a serious expression. Tell me, what did she do? Do you have an arrest warrant? Deputy Chief Liao was speechless. He was indeed difficult to deal with. Mr. Hua, this is the Special Operations Forces headquarters. Anyone who can enter here has to have at least a level 5 security clearance. Gu Nianji. She can't even pass level 1. How can she stay here? She's already violated the National Security Act. If you want an arrest warrant, I can have it issued right now. A level 5 security clearance is required? Then arrest Bai Changhui and Bai Jini first. They came to the Special Operations Forces headquarters yesterday and crossed the security line without a pass. According to you, they're also breaking the law. Why don't you arrest them? Huo Xiaoheng clasped his hands together and leaned forward. His piercing gaze made Deputy Chief Liao sweat profusely. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with a white handkerchief. Mr. Hua, so you're willing to break the law and disregard your mother to protect Gu Nianji? He was trying to get at Gu Nianji's importance to Huo Xiaoheng. This was the second installment, 3,000 words long. Begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Dear friends, please vote for me. Chapter 232. Huo Xiaoheng leaned forward slightly, holding his polished pistol. He looked up at Deputy Director Liao, then took out his phone, turned on the recording button, and pointed it at Deputy Director Liao. He said dryly, what did you just say? I didn't hear you. Say it again. Deputy Director Liao looked at the phone in Huo Xiaoheng's hand, sweat pouring down his forehead. How dare he say something like that and risk being recorded? Say it. Weren't you very talkative just now? Why can't you say it to the phone? Huo Xiaoheng shook his head with a smile. He placed the phone on the coffee table in the middle of the sofa, crossed his legs, and waved his arm arrogantly behind him. Deputy Director Liao, it's too late if you don't say it now. You're on my turf. From the moment you stepped into this room, your every word and action has been recorded. What? How dare you secretly record me? That's against the law. You're invading my privacy. Recording without my permission is an invasion of my privacy and civil rights. Deputy Director Liao waved his arms agitatedly, fear written all over his face. Huo Xiaoheng sat on the sofa silently as he watched Deputy Director Liao dance. After a while, he spun the pistol in his hand and said unhurriedly, Deputy Director Liao, this has nothing to do with you. Why are you getting involved? Deputy Director Liao saw that he had already reached this point. Since the other party had already recorded the conversation, it was no longer possible for him to curry favor with Huo Xiaoheng. He gritted his teeth and said, So, Major General Hua, You would rather break the law and disregard your mother to protect Gunyanji? That's a strange question. Who told you to ask that? Huo Xiaoheng frowned as if he couldn't figure it out. What? Who told me to ask that? Of course I wanted to ask that question. Deputy Director Liao said nervously, you only have two choices now. Either hand over Mrs. Song or Gunyanji. Do you have any other choice? Of course I do. Huo Xiaoheng sat up straight. Mrs. Song is my mother. Why would I hand her over to someone who has nothing to do with me? As for Gunyanji, she's my mission. Go ask around, when have I ever given up halfway through a mission? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stood up. His gun was already cocked, and he leaned forward to point it at Deputy Director Liao's temple. You want to take Gunyanji away from me? Are you trying to interfere with military affairs? Do you believe that I will shoot you right now? Deputy Commissioner Liao was so frightened that he squeezed his eyes shut and gasped for breath. Major General Huo, please calm down. Major General Huo, please calm down. I was only entrusted by someone. Major General Huo, don't be rash. Entrusted by someone? Who asked him to do this? If you tell me, I'll let you go. Huo Xiaoheng sat down on the coffee table and continued to point the gun at Deputy Director Liao's temple with one hand. He patted Deputy Director Liao's face with the other. If you tell me who it was, I promise I'll delete all the audio and video recordings from today. Really? Deputy Director Liao hadn't expected there to be a way out of this predicament. He felt as if his heart had just fallen into a bottomless abyss, only to find a rope dangling down to save him. He felt as if he had just been rescued from a hopeless situation. Major General Huo, will you keep your word? Huo Xiaoheng raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. He only glanced at him. Deputy Director Liao suddenly felt that Huo Xiaoheng was especially trustworthy. He immediately said, this really had nothing to do with me. I was forced to do this. You know, the Bai family. The Bai family? Huo Xiaoheng smiled. They must have had something to do with this, but I don't think the Bai family would have thought of asking you to kidnap Gunyanji. Major General Huo, you're very perceptive. Deputy Director Liao was taken aback. He could see that Huo Xiaoheng already had an idea. If he told him, it would only confirm his suspicions. Why hide it? He took a deep breath and lowered his voice. They know you so well. Of course it's your family. Family? Huo Xiaoheng put his gun back into its holster. I have a lot of family members. Can you be more specific? I heard it from someone else. Deputy Director Liao was embarrassed. They said she's your cousin. The only person who could properly refer to Huo Xiaoheng as his cousin was Huo Jialan. Huo Xiaoheng closed his eyes and returned to his seat on the sofa. He said calmly, I see. Actually, my family doesn't know me that well. I'm not close to them. Deputy Director Liao was speechless. I haven't been home to take care of my mother for so many years because of my mission. That's why I want to spend more time with my mother during the holidays. I want to make up for it and show my filial piety. Protecting Gunyanji is a mission given to me by the military. It's to serve the country and be loyal. I'm being filial and loyal at the same time. Isn't that a good thing? My family doesn't understand this, so it's obvious that they can't be trusted. Huo Xiaoheng spoke with fervor and assurance. Deputy Director Liao couldn't refute a single word he said. Deputy Director Liao stood up. Fine, Major General Huo. I've answered all your questions. The audio and video. He looked around the living room as if trying to figure out where the hidden cameras and recording devices were. Of course I'll delete them. Don't worry. Huo Xiaoheng stood up as well. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was like a hammer to Deputy Director Liao's heart. When you go back, tell them that if anyone dares to make life difficult for my mother, I promise as her son, that I will seek justice. But if anyone dares to make life difficult for my mission, I'm sorry, but I won't give them a second chance to do so. I've never failed a mission since I joined the military. If they fail because of Gunyanji's mission, ask them if they can bear my wrath. His words were clear about public and private interests, sonorous and forceful, without any personal feelings mixed in. Deputy Director Liao was ashamed. He felt like he was taking the side of the evildoer. He nodded hastily. I understand. I was being silly. Don't worry, Major General Huo. The police HQ will never get involved in this again. I'm relieved to hear that, Deputy Director Liao. Huo Xiaoheng smiled and shook Deputy Director Liao's hand. You're the Deputy Director of the Police HQ, and you're also part of the military. I'm sure you understand the word mission better than anyone else. After a slap in the face, Hua Xiaoheng gave him a carrot. Deputy Director Liao was completely convinced by Hua Xiaoheng. No wonder Major General Hua is in such a high position at such a young age. You've never failed so many missions. Hua Xiaoheng smiled as he saw Deputy Director Liao out. He stood at the door and narrowed his eyes as he watched Deputy Director Liao drive away with the police officers. Zhao Liangzi asked him through the earpiece, "Mr. Hua, should I delete the video and audio?" "Of course not," Hua Xiaoheng replied dryly. "Since when do I keep my word to my opponents?" The other party was clearly trying to mess with him, and he still wanted to convince them with reason? Convince them with virtue? He must be out of his mind. After so many years of working as a foreign intelligence officer, they had long developed the habit of holding back on everything. Zhao Liangzi burst into laughter over the earpiece. "Got it? I'll put today's audio and video on file with the highest security password." This meant that Deputy Director Liao's audio and video recordings would be sealed forever, unless absolutely necessary. As long as Deputy Director Liao didn't go back on his word, the audio and video recordings would never see the light of day. In a sense, Hua Xiaoheng had fulfilled his promise to Deputy Director Liao. As soon as Deputy Director Liao returned to the police HQ, he went to inform Bai Changhui of Hua Xiaoheng's words. Bai Changhui choked, unable to utter a single word. Bai Jini was indignant and wanted to find someone else to help. They had caused such a ruckus that the head of the Bai family, Bai Jianqing, was alerted. "Changhui Jini, that's enough." Bai Jianqing slammed his fist on the table angrily. "The Bai family is in the teeth of a storm right now, and yet you're offering yourselves up for a slap. Are you tired of living?" "Brother, how can you say that? I've worked so hard to cure Song Jining for more than a decade." Although Bai Jini was afraid of her brother, she didn't want to let him go at this critical moment. She had been on tenterhooks for the past few days. She had a nagging feeling that something bad was about to happen. This premonition made her restless. She wouldn't rest until she had Song Jining back in her hands. "Shut up," Bai Jianqing growled. "Don't treat others like fools. Who do you think Hua Xiaoheng is? Don't think you're so great just because you've been studying for a few years. You were still dreaming in your lab when he was wreaking havoc overseas. Even the elite foreign special forces see him as their #1 enemy. Do you think Hua Guanchen alone can force him to hand over Song Jining? You've really wasted all your time studying." "Brother, I'm doing this for the Bai family." Bai Jini was aggrieved. "If I can get Song Jining to spit out the data, then my experiment will be a success. Then our Bai family will be able to rise to the next level. 16 years won't even be enough. Don't even think about it. Stop thinking about it now." Bai Jianqing warned Bai Jini. "Don't let me hear any more news of you doing anything to the Hua family. When that time comes, Hua Xiaoheng won't have to deal with you. I'll be the first to deal with you." "Brother?" Bai Jini cried out in panic. She suddenly remembered what Gunyanji had said the other day. She had said that she would be the Bai family's sacrificial pawn. Ba. She couldn't have been right about that, could she? Bai Jini gritted her teeth. "Fine. If we can't get Song Jining back, then what about Gunyanji? Can't we get her back?" Gunyanji is a mission assigned to Hua Xiaoheng by the military. A competent soldier will not give up his mission on a silver platter. So don't even think about getting Gunyanji back. Bai Yueran walked out from behind the screen. She nodded to the people in the study. Dad, third uncle, auntie. Bai Jianqing was her father, Bai Changhui was her third uncle, and Bai Jini was her only biological aunt. This was the first night watch, 3,000 words long. Dear friends, please cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes quickly. The second night watch today was still at 7 o'clock p.m. P.S. Thank you to Dreamy Cloud Boy for the gift yesterday. Mwah. Oh, __intersection. Oh. Chapter 233. The Bai family originally had a second son, Bai Yuxing, but he had died in a diving accident somewhere in South America. Bai Yueran was considered the most accomplished and official in the next generation of the Bai family. Although she wasn't a son, she was much better than many other sons. Bai Jianqing didn't have any prejudice against boys or girls. As long as it was his child, as long as it was capable, he would do his best to help it. Yueran has a point. The Bai family is already very passive because of what happened to the second son. Bai Jianqing shook his head helplessly. Third brother and Jeannie, you two need to restrain yourselves. Jeannie, you need to think of a way to marry Hua Guanchen as soon as possible. Bai Jeannie's mood immediately soured. However, she couldn't vent her anger in front of the younger generation. She could only sit on the sofa and drink her coffee. Bai Yuan sat next to her and said disapprovingly, "Aunt, don't listen to Hu Jialan anymore. She only has that little brain, she only knows how to think about relationships. Wu Xiao isn't that kind of person. Gu Nianji is his mission and he's her guardian. How could Hu Jialan think of using her to threaten Hu Xiao? You don't think they have that kind of relationship?" But Jialan said they live in the same house with the Hua family and behave intimately. Some expressions can't be faked. Bai Jini said blankly as she held her coffee. She thought she had something on Hua Xiaoheng, but didn't expect it to be so unreliable. Hua Xiaoheng really was a tough character. A tough character with no weaknesses. It was a real headache to deal with him. Hua Xiao raised Gu Nianji for 6 years, of course he has feelings for her. However, these feelings were nothing compared to his mission and the interests of the country. I know Hua Xiao very well. He's not the kind of person who doesn't know what's important. Bai Yuan had always felt that she and Hua Xiaoheng were the same kind of person. They were too similar, so there had never been any feelings between them. Otherwise her father, Bai Jianqing, would have set them up a long time ago. What about Song Jining? Bai Jini was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Hua Xiao hasn't been back for so many years, and now he's taking her away as soon as he comes back. I'm always worried that he's plotting something. Auntie, why are you so worried about Hua Xiao meeting his mother? Bai Yuan looked directly at Bai Jini. What else are you hiding from me, father and third uncle? Bai Jini turned her head away uncomfortably. She lowered her head and took another sip of coffee. She mumbled, "It's nothing. I just heard from Jialan that Song Jining's condition has improved a lot. Maybe she'll regain her senses soon." "Oh," Bai Yuan drawled. "That's it. Of course. Think about it, she and I used to be best friends, but now she's divorced and I'm with her ex-husband." Bai Jini said irritably. She looked up at Bai Jianqing. "Brother, I want to break up with Hua Guanchen." "No." Bai Jianqing objected. "You've been together for almost 10 years, and the Hua family is on the rise now. You can't be too willful." Bai Jini flopped onto the sofa and stared blankly at the ceiling of the study. If it had been Hua Guanyuan, she would have been willing to be his mistress as long as he wanted her, but Hua Guanchen, she couldn't say he wasn't good. After all these years, Hua Guanchen had treated her better than Hua Guanyuan had, but she still couldn't get over it. But Hua Guanyuan no longer existed in this world, so being with Hua Guanchen wasn't unacceptable. Bai Jini thought about it for a long time. She closed her eyes and said, "I can get engaged to Hua Guanchen. There's no rush to get married. He already has a son anyway." At her age, she couldn't have children anymore, so it didn't really matter if she got married or not. Bai Jianqing looked at her darkly. He thought about it and nodded. "Then get engaged first. Remember to go to the Hua family in a few days and mention it to Hua Guanchen." "Got it." Bai Jini finished her coffee in one gulp. She got up and left Bai Jianqing's study with Bai Changhui. After they left, Bai Yuan stared in the direction Bai Jini had disappeared and whispered to Bai Jianqing, "Dad, I think Auntie is still hiding something from us." Bai Jianqing knew a thing or two about what had happened all those years ago. He grunted quietly. "Don't worry about it. You need to put more effort into General Ji. Also, your cousin Bai Shuang will be returning to China in a few days. Remember to clean up a house for her to live in. Your second aunt passed away a long time ago, and so is your second uncle. I'm worried about her living alone. Shuang is coming back." Bai Yuan looked pleasantly surprised. "That's great, I'll go pick her up. Let me know her flight number and date when you get there." Ever since Gu Nianji had fallen asleep, she had been in a coma like Song Jining. Fortunately, Chen Lai and Yi Zitan were there. They had all kinds of medical equipment and medication. Gu Nianji's coma had been closely monitored and there were no other health problems. She slept until the afternoon of December 30th. She didn't know so much had happened in the meantime. Gu Nianji sat up in bed. Her body felt sluggish. The pain had long since disappeared, but she was still a bit tired. Perhaps because her bone marrow wasn't regenerating as quickly, she still felt a bit weak. Hua Xiaoheng was sitting on the massage sofa across from the bed reading documents. He heard movement on the bed and looked up to see Gu Nianji sitting up in his black t-shirt. Her snow-white skin glowed against the pure black t-shirt. Because it was Hua Xiaoheng's clothes, the neckline was a bit too big for Gu Nianji, who had a small frame. She stretched, and when she dropped her arms, the black t-shirt fell down to reveal her delicate white collarbone and the large expanse of white and moving skin below. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her indifferently. His dark eyes seemed to be locked, and it was impossible to read any of his emotions or thoughts. "You're awake." Hua Xiaoheng put down the documents and sat on the edge of the bed. He raised his hand to feel her forehead. Her temperature was normal. She didn't have a fever. Gu Nianji held his hand and squeezed it. Hua Xiao, I'm fine now. It doesn't hurt anymore? Hua Xiaoheng still asked. Qinlai said I can take the painkillers in 48 hours. It doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt at all. Gu Nianji let go of Hua Xiaoheng's hand and waved her arm. Look, I can move now. I just don't have any strength. My joints are a bit sore. Qinlai said it's normal. Hua Xiaoheng finally relaxed. Get up and wash up. We're going out for dinner. Gu Nianji's eyes widened as she looked at the window. What time is it now? You slept from the afternoon of the 27th to the afternoon of the 30th. You almost slept through the new year. Hua Xiaoheng patted her head. Get up. Eat more and get some nourishment. Gu Nianji gasped. I slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Only then did she see the needle inserted into the vein in her arm. She looked up to see a makeshift metal stand beside the bed. She couldn't help but purse her lips. I'll call Yi Zitan over to remove the needle. Hua Xiaoheng pressed the intercom on the bedside table. Dr. Yi Nianji is awake. Finally awake? That's great. I'll be right there. Yi Zitan's voice sounded from the intercom. Yi Zitan quickly came in and removed the needle and bottle from Gu Nianji's foredrip. After she left, Gu Nianji lifted the blankets to get out of bed. Hua Xiaoheng stood up calmly and looked at Gu Nianji's fair, slender thighs. You can't walk around the house wearing this. There are guards and cameras everywhere. Oh. Gu Nianji quickly burrowed under the blankets. She moved faster than a startled rabbit. There are cameras in here. Not here. Hua Xiaoheng bent down to pick up the documents he had been reading. There are no cameras in the bedroom or bathroom. Phew, I was scared to death. Gu Nianji patted her chest. Hua Xiao, why did you install so many cameras in this official residence? Feels so strange. This is the official residence of the highest-ranking officer in the Special Operations Forces headquarters. It's not an exaggeration to have too many cameras. Hua Xiaoheng walked out with the documents. Hurry up and get up. Qinlai wants to give you another checkup. Gu Nianji quickly agreed and went to the bathroom to take a shower. She saw in the mirror that her face looked oily from sleep, so she put on a cleansing mask. When she found the brand of cleansing mask she often used in the small cabinet in the bathroom, she was overjoyed. She thought happily, although I'm already an adult, Hua Xiao hasn't forgotten his duty as a guardian. Qinlai happily walked in with the equipment and was almost shocked by the black mask she had smeared all over her face. Okay, that's enough time. I'm going to wash up. Gu Nianji quickly went to the bathroom to wash off the mask and found that her skin was much better. Qinlai put on various instruments and connected them to her brain, heart, and pulse to measure the changes in her vital signs. As he expected, Gu Nianji recovered very well. Other than some anemia and weakness, there were no other sequelae. Also, her own cell repair ability was very strong. Even if she wasn't given food supplements, her health would automatically recover over time and her body would automatically strengthen. Tisk, that's amazing. Qinlai looked at the data printed out on the grid paper. He looked at it for a long time and memorized a lot of typical data before burning it all. Am I okay? Gu Nianji asked uneasily. I don't feel uncomfortable. I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine. Qinlai chuckled. Thanks to your help, Mrs. Song's condition is also very stable. There's no rejection. Everything is fine. We're just waiting for her to wake up. Gu Nianji was overjoyed. After removing all the equipment, she rushed to operating room B to check on Song Jining. As expected, her complexion was much better than before. Her breathing was steady and smooth, and her sleeping face was so beautiful it was hard to describe. Gu Nianji couldn't help gently touching Song Jining's forehead. She's really like a sleeping beauty. Is she waiting for the prince to wake her up with a kiss? What nonsense are you talking about? You've read too many fairy tales and become stupid. Qinlai looked at her with disdain. Little prodigy, come over and help me with a set of data. Qinlai waved at her. Gu Nianji turned to walk to Qinlai. She didn't see Song Jining's hands suddenly tremble on the operating chair. Then her eyelids fluttered and she slowly opened her eyes. This is the second installment of 3,000 words. Dear friends, please cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Good night, my dears moi. Chapter 234. What data? Brother Qin, there's data you can't handle? Gu Nianji excitedly sat in front of Qinlai's computer and browsed through his files. It's in here. There's too much data and normal software is too slow to handle it. Help me write a small program that can quickly retrieve and analyze the data. The main problem is that this access is too slow. Qinlai sighed and shook his head as he pointed at the computer screen. Gunyanji skimmed through it and roughly estimated the size of the file, the amount of computing power needed, the computer configuration, and so on before deciding where to start writing the program. Brother Zhe is actually the expert in this field. Why didn't you look for him? Why did you look for me, a dabbler? Gunyanji's slender fingers flew across the keyboard as she typed out a series of instructions. Qinlai poured himself a cup of tea and took a contented sip. He smiled as he sat on the sofa. He's been a busy man ever since he returned to the base. How could I dare ask him? The key reason was that the data Qinlai was analyzing was Gunyanji's physical and cellular DNA data. It couldn't be seen by a third person, not even Zhao Liangzi. But Gunyanji was different. It didn't matter if she saw the data herself. She was a dabbler when it came to computers and there were many things she knew but didn't know why. So it was fine even if she saw it. Qinlai didn't dare take the risk with Zhao Liangzi. After all, Zhao Liangzi's computer skills were top-notch. He could back up his data at any time without anyone knowing. Qinlai had been sold and still counted the money for him. Operating room B was silent for a minute. Only the crisp sound of Gunyanji's keyboard could be heard echoing in the room. Qinlai was about to close his eyes for a nap when he suddenly heard a siren coming from afar. What's wrong? What happened? Gunyanji looked up from the computer and blankly stared ahead. She suddenly froze. She was directly in the direction of Song Jinning's operating chair. The sleeping beauty who had been sleeping a moment ago was now sitting up. Her beautiful eyes stared unblinkingly at Gunyanji. Brother Qin. Gunyanji's arm trembled as she pointed in Song Jinning's direction. Didn't you say you'd only wake up in a week? Qinlai was also shocked by the alarm for a moment. He turned his head and saw Song Jinning sitting up in the operating chair with a blank expression on her face. He couldn't help but yell, "Oh my God! How did you wake up in just 3 days?" He shot forward like an arrow from a bow. His fat body was unexpectedly fast and Gunyanji was dumbfounded. Qinlai rushed to the operating chair and excitedly turned off the alarm device. He excitedly looked at the lines of data displayed on the testing device and laughed like a madman. Song Jinning's gaze was attracted by Qinlai's dancing hands and feet. She no longer stared at Gunyanji. She looked back at Qinlai with interest and shook her head with a smile. Gunyanji hurriedly wrapped up her program and walked over. "Mrs. Song, are you feeling better?" Song Jinning looked over and said politely, "Hello, my husband's surname is Hua, but you can call me Jinning. May I ask who you are?" She sized up Gunyanji in her heart and felt that this little girl's big, bright eyes were misty and moist, as though they contained 1,000 words and were ready to confide in someone at any time. She couldn't help but feel pity for her, but judging from her age she was probably not even 20 years old. Gunyanji froze and her eyes widened in an instant, but quickly returned to normal. She smiled and said, "My name is Gunyanji. Mrs. Song, are you feeling better? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Song Jinning also smiled and nodded. "You're a nurse here?" She looked at Qinlai who was happily fiddling with the medical equipment in his white coat, and then at Gunyanji. She asked her, "He's a doctor?" She had just said this when she felt a sharp pain in her brain. The sharp pain was like a bayonet stabbing into her brain, opening up a gap in the memories that had been sealed away for 16 years. Memories of the past flooded her mind, and her newly recovered body couldn't withstand such a burden. She couldn't help hugging her head and leaning against the operating chair, cold sweat pouring down her face. The pain almost made her bite off the tip of her tongue, but she endured it without making a sound. Gunyanji watched as her body trembled slightly, and her face suddenly turned pale. Even her lips had lost color and her eyes were dim. She was in so much pain that she curled up her toes, but she didn't make a single sound. "Cry out if it hurts." Gunyanji went up to hug Song Jinning and gently rubbed her back. She turned to Qinlai. "Brother Qin, do you have painkillers? Give some to Mrs. Song." Qinlai looked up from behind the equipment as if he was dreaming, his eyes almost unfocused. "What? Painkillers?" Gunyanji pouted. "What are you thinking? Mrs. Song just woke up so she might not be feeling well." She pouted at Song Jinning. She didn't expect Song Jinning to still have the energy to look at Gunyanji at a time like this. She felt very close to Gunyanji when she saw her, and couldn't help lecturing her. "Girls shouldn't pout." Song Jinning's voice was very soft. If she hadn't been so close to Gunyanji wouldn't have heard what she was saying. Gunyanji was speechless. She looked down at Song Jining, who was leaning against her shoulder. She was a bit ashamed to see that Song Jining hadn't lost her poise despite the pain. She murmured, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Song. I'll be more careful next time." "Okay." Song Jining replied softly. She sighed, and the pain in her head gradually subsided. Leaning against Gunyanji, her condition did improve. This little girl made people feel happy as soon as they saw her. Chin Lai reluctantly put down his equipment and brought 2 painkillers and a glass of water. He handed them to Gunyanji. "Give this to Mrs. Song." Gunyanji held the painkillers in her palm and brought them to Song Jining's mouth. "Mrs. Song, do you want to eat this? What brand of painkiller is this?" Song Jining looked at the 2 pills carefully. "Which factory produced it? What are the active ingredients? How long does it last? Are there any side effects?" Gunyanji was speechless. She suddenly felt like she was being inspected by the professor for being absent-minded in class. Chin Lai was even more nervous than she was. As soon as he heard the question, he immediately said, "This is high-concentration aspirin. It's 100 times more effective than the one sold on the market. The main ingredient is high-purity salicylic acid, so it won't cause addiction. 1 pill lasts for 2 hours and 2 pills can extend the effect to 3 hours. The side effect is that it will cause gastrointestinal discomfort and may cause nausea and other effects." Song Jining looked at the 2 white pills and frowned. "I've never heard of aspirin with such high concentration." Then he pushed Gunyanji's hand away and refused to take the pills. He said politely, "Thank you, but it's okay. I'll just bear with it. Can you pour me a glass of hot water?" Gunyanji was speechless. Chin Lai's forehead was covered in beads of sweat. He quickly took out a handkerchief from his trouser pocket to wipe his sweat and stammered, "Madam, this aspirin has been available for 4 or 5 years, but it's a special prescription drug. You can't buy it over the counter outside. It's really medicine. I'm not lying to you." Song Jining looked up at him quietly and finally asked, "Who are you? Where is this place?" "I'm Chin Lai, the doctor taking care of you." Chin Lai breathed a sigh of relief and pointed outside the door. "This is the official residence of the Chief of the Special Operations Forces." Song Jining's expression was a bit confused, but she hid it well. She continued to look at Chin Lai politely and quietly waited for him to finish. Gunyanji noticed something was wrong. She tugged on Chin Lai's sleeve to stop him from rambling in front of Song Jining. Chin Lai turned to look at her. "Yanji, what's wrong?" Gunyanji nodded at him and looked at Song Jining. "Madam, do you remember what happened before you fainted?" She wanted to test Song Jining to see how much she had recovered. However, Song Jining frowned and thought about it. Her head hurt for a while and she panted slightly. "Explosion. I remember there was an earth-shattering explosion in our lab before I fainted. This was the first night watch. Dear friends, please cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes quickly. Today's second night watch was still at 7 in the evening. P.S. Thanks to Huaishuan my 4 tipping Heshibi yesterday. Moi. Chapter 235. Gunyanji was speechless. What was going on? Wasn't she on the way from the Hor residence to this official residence before she fainted? What was Song Jining thinking about? Gunyanji's eyes darted to Song Jining's face, but she still didn't understand. Explosion? What explosion? Chin Lai looked up abruptly, his round eyes burning behind his round glasses as he stared at Song Jining. "Madam, are you talking about the experiment from 16 years ago?" He knew that Song Jining had ended up like this because of that failed experiment, 16 years ago? Although Song Jining was still in a daze, she still acutely caught on to what Chin Lai was saying. "What do you mean 16 years ago?" Song Jining's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" Gunyanji finally understood. Song Jining had regained consciousness, but her memory seemed to have stopped at the time of the big explosion 16 years ago. She couldn't remember anything after that? That made sense. Because after she got sick, she only remembered memories from before she was 18 years old. She couldn't remember anything from when she was 18 years old to now. Every day, some of her cells were growing in reverse, repeating over and over again. Day after day, she would forget the events of the previous day and forever remain 18 years old. This means that Madam has more memories after she regained consciousness. Chin Lai looked down and began recording on Song Jining's medical record. Madam is 48 years old this year, So her memory has already recovered from before she was 18 to before she was 32 years old, which is 16 years ago. Gu Nianji was speechless. She moved closer to Qinlai's ear and whispered, "What about the memories from the past 16 years? Is there really nothing left?" "That's hard to say." Qinlai sighed and shook his head. The 16 years of injury from the explosion had an organic effect on her. Her memory cells can't permanently retain the memories of the previous day. For example, goldfish can only remember for 7 seconds, but Madam's memory for the past 16 years is only 24 hours a day. She's slightly better than goldfish. Gu Nianji felt terrible. She looked at Song Jining in a daze. How much had happened in the past 16 years? It was too cruel for Song Jining. However, she did not remember anything about it. She did not know if it was a good or bad thing. Song Jining was confused by Qinlai and Gu Nianji's conversation. "What are you guys talking about? I'm 48? That can't be right, right? Isn't he 32? She looked suspiciously at the rotund Qinlai, then at the slender and beautiful Gu Nianji. She felt that Gu Nianji was more trustworthy. She stared at Gu Nianji and asked, "You're Gu Nianji? Can I call you Nianji?" "Yes, madam." Gu Nianji hurriedly said, "Don't worry, speak slowly." Song Jining closed her eyes, her mind in a mess. As she stayed awake longer and longer, memories of the past kept rolling in her mind. The earth-shattering explosion, the sky-covering fire, and the laboratory that was almost razed to the ground after the explosion. Many people were running and screaming in the fire. She thought she was going to die, but someone rushed over and pushed her and her father out of the lab. She rolled a dozen times on the ground and hid behind a large rock in front of the laboratory building. She saw that her father was running back. And then there was no then. She watched helplessly as everything turned to ash in front of her. The aftermath of the explosion was extremely powerful, and the magnetic field at the scene changed dramatically. She still remembered the shock wave that almost penetrated her brain. It was not a shock wave that could erupt in a laboratory. Song Jining opened her eyes in a daze and looked at Gu Nianji, then at Qinlai. "What happened? Tell me." "Madam, why don't I call Wuxia over and let him tell you?" Qinlai thought about it. Song Jining had participated in the military's top-secret experiment. For 16 years, the experiment had remained the military's top secret. No other experiment had surpassed its importance, and no one had been able to repeat the experiment. Bai Jini, the director of the Institute of High-Energy Physics, had spent 16 years trying to recreate the experiment, but hadn't even begun. Now that Song Jining was awake and seemed to have memories from 16 years ago, this was already the best news the Imperial Army had received in 16 years. But this information should be kept in He Xiaoheng's hands. Qinlai tugged at Gu Nianji's sleeve and gave her a look. "Call He Xiao over." Gu Nianji nodded and smiled at Song Jining. "Please wait a moment, madam. We'll call He Xiao over and all your questions will be answered." "He Xiao." Song Jining frowned. "Is it Guanchen? Where is he?" Gu Nianji was speechless. "No way." She still didn't remember she had a son. Gu Nianji gritted her teeth. "Madam, He Xiao is your son. Your biological son. He Xiaoheng, have you forgotten?" Qinlai didn't even have time to stop her. He angrily pulled Gu Nianji to the side and growled, "Why are you saying it now? Madam just woke up, you can't agitate her like this." "But she does have a son." Gu Nianji felt wronged. It's fine if she didn't remember before, but now she remembers she has a husband. Is it strange to have a son? She was feeling indignant for He Xiaoheng. Song Jining couldn't forget him when she was sick or even after she recovered. Before Qinlai could glare at Gu Nianji again, Song Jining whispered from behind them, "Xiaoheng? He's only 12, right? What do you want him for?" Gu Nianji was speechless. Qinlai was speechless. They looked at each other and turned to Song Jining. "Madam, you remembered wrong. He Xiao is already 28 this year." Qinlai pushed Gu Nianji out. "Hurry and call He Xiao in." Gu Nianji didn't waste any more time and quickly ran out of operating room B to the corner of the living room. She saw He Xiaoheng coming down the stairs from the second floor. He stood tall and straight, wearing a white shirt. The buttons on his chest were neatly buttoned, and the first button of his collar was unbuttoned, revealing his neck and a little bit of his collarbone below his neck. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing a small section of his muscular arms. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his military pants as he slowly walked down the stairs. He Xiaoheng was tall and had long legs. He was a natural clothes rack, so no matter what he wore he would always look indescribable. He had an aura of abstinence that kept people away from him, but at the same time he attracted people's attention. Gu Nianji liked him immensely when she saw him like this. She ran to the stairs and took his arm. Hua Xiao. Good news. Hurry and come with me. Okay. Hua Xiaoheng responded dryly and discreetly removed his arm from Gu Nianji's embrace. Walk properly. Gu Nianji blinked but didn't mind. She happily walked beside Hua Xiaoheng and whispered, Hua Xiao, hurry and go to operating room B. There's a big surprise. Hua Xiaoheng paused and looked at Gu Nianji. What is it? He knew that Song Jining needed 7 days to wake up. It had only been 3 days, so it couldn't be about Song Jining. Gu Nianji kept him in suspense. You'll know when you see it. Hua Xiaoheng followed her to operating room B and saw Chen Lai push the door open. Hua Xiao, you're finally here. Hurry and go in. Oh no. I can't take it. Your mother is too amazing. No wonder she was a genius all those years ago. I think she's still a super genius who surpasses normal geniuses by leaps and bounds. Damn it. Why didn't I know that the human body's meridians had specific routes that could be checked? Hua Xiao, didn't your mother study high-energy physics? How did she dabble in medicine? Chen Lai, the medical genius, seemed to have met his match for the first time in a decade. He was sweating profusely from the questions and almost ran away. Hua Xiaoheng's footsteps stopped at the door of operating room B. His heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. What did you say? My mother is awake? Only 3 days. Didn't you say it would take at least 7 days? It was the second half of the night. Dear friends, please cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes quickly. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival everyone. P.S. I'll go to the group tonight to wish everyone a happy holiday. Mwah. Chapter 236. Sigh, I was wrong, but it's not a big deal. It's actually my first time doing this kind of surgery, so it's normal to make a mistake. Chen Lai boasted shamelessly as he stepped away from the door. Go in, Mrs. Song is waiting for you inside. He looked like he wanted to avoid arousing suspicion. Hua Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and stood quietly at the door of operating room B for a while. Chen Lai gave Gu Nianji a look, and they nodded at the same time. They snuck out of operating room AB and ran out the door, closing it tightly behind them. Is this okay? Gu Nianji looked around with lingering fear. No one else saw, right? There are cameras and recording equipment in the public areas of this official residence. Chen Lai looked straight ahead and smiled. His voice was very quiet, but Gu Nianji was standing close to him and heard him. So it's true. Gu Nianji mumbled, then stopped mumbling. You said you wanted to analyze the data with me. Hurry up and go, don't just stand there. Chen Lai pushed Gu Nianji's shoulder and ushered her to the small office on the other side to work for him. At the door of operating room B, Hua Xiaoheng finally resisted the urge to smoke and pushed open the door. There were shadowless lights installed on the roof, illuminating the windowless room as if it were daytime. A stunningly beautiful woman in a snow-white patient's gown leaned against the operating chair. She tilted her head slightly in the direction of the door, her eyes filled with anticipation, curiosity, and a trace of apprehension. This was how he remembered his mother. Hua Xiaoheng calmed down. He walked in and closed the door gently behind him. Song Jining looked up to see a tall, dignified man walk in. When he looked up at her, she was momentarily dazed. Was this incredibly handsome man really her son, Hua Xiaoheng? In her memory, Xiaoheng was still that handsome, quiet 12-year-old boy. He didn't speak much, but when she, his mother, was too busy in the lab to celebrate his birthday, he would sneak a few stops to visit her in the lab with a birthday cake, just to eat the cake with her. That was all her son asked of her all year round. She still remembered that the day the laboratory exploded 16 years ago was the day before Hua Xiaoheng's birthday. She wanted to end the experiment as soon as possible so that she could celebrate his birthday with him the next day and eat a piece of birthday cake together. He didn't expect that 16 years would pass just like that. The boy from back then had grown into a mature and steady young man, completely different from what she remembered. Hua Xiaoheng walked over slowly and sat on a soft chair beside the operating chair. His expression had already returned to normal. He nodded at Song Jining. Madam Song is awake? Song Jining's eyes widened when she heard Mrs. Song. She stared at Hua Xiaoheng for a long time before she laughed dryly. Xiaoheng. How big have you become? I wanted to eat your birthday cake with you the next day. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes narrowed slightly. His expression was extremely natural as he said, Mother, you remember? Yes. Song Jining reached out to touch Hua Xiaoheng's head, but Hua Xiaoheng sat there motionlessly and had no intention of moving closer. She could only shyly withdraw her hand and look at him almost greedily. She asked again, "How big have you become?" Wu Xiaoheng smiled slightly. 16 years. Of course I've grown up. He then added, "Mother, you must have suffered all these years." Suffered? Song Jining tilted her head and asked in confusion, "You mean I was injured and ill for so many years?" Wu Xiaoheng was speechless. So this was the surprise Qinlai had mentioned? Although Song Jining had woken up, she had forgotten what had happened in the past 16 years? Wu Xiaoheng's thoughts only wavered for a moment before he quickly calmed down and remembered something else. If Song Jining could remember what had happened before the accident in the laboratory when she was awake, then wouldn't the military be able to find the real reason for the failed experiment 16 years ago? No wonder Qinlai had taken Gu Nianji with him when he left the operating room, leaving only the mother and son. In other words, Qinlai was expressing that he didn't want to know about what had happened all those years ago and didn't need to know. What had happened all those years ago was a military secret and also a secret of the laboratory. It should have been shared between Wu Xiaoheng and Song Jining. Wu Xiaoheng actually thought even further than Qinlai. He knew that news of Song Jining waking up would spread after the new year at the latest. At that time, countless people would try their best to get Song Jining away. Song Jining's only use to those people was the accident in her father's laboratory all those years ago. If that part of her memory was intact, not only would she be able to unravel many of the secrets in their hearts, but she might also be able to repeat the parameters of the experiment and restart the top-secret experiment all those years ago. The latter was far more useful than the former. How could any experiment not fail? The military understood this very well. In order to make the experiment succeed, they were even willing to disregard what had happened in the past. As long as someone could reconstruct the experiment and make it a success, they would be able to tolerate and whitewash their mistakes, no matter how big the mistake. So in order to divert the attention of those people from Song Jining, Wu Xiaoheng didn't mind sharing some of the firepower with her. He was very decisive and had already made up his mind. Ever since Mother was injured in the last experiment, she had a strange illness. She only had memories of before she was 18 years old. Every day after that, you would forget what happened the day before, so your memories were stuck at 18 years old. Wu Xiaoheng briefly explained Song Jining's illness for the past 16 years. Song Jining listened with a frown and murmured, "So that's how it is. So that's how it is." It seems that the magnetic field was indeed extraordinary. She was the only experimenter who had survived the sudden explosion of the strong magnetic field, so she was also the only person alive to feel the consequences of the strong magnetic field. We don't know exactly why it happened either. At one point, the doctor diagnosed that Mother had suffered a serious setback and shock, so she was suffering from a serious mental illness. Wu Xiaoheng glanced at Song Jining's dry lips and stood up calmly. He poured Song Jining a glass of water and placed it in her hand. So Bai Jini volunteered to be a part-time psychiatrist to treat Mother's mental illness. Bai Jini? Song Jining held the glass of water with both hands, slightly startled. My university classmate, Bai Jini? The Bai Jini who used to come to our house? Yes, that's her. Wu Xiaoheng nodded and said expressionlessly, "She's now Father's girlfriend, officially his girlfriend." Song Jining straightened her back and sat on the operating chair. When she heard Wu Xiaoheng's words for a few seconds, she felt like her brain was completely empty, like an empty box with nothing inside. But soon tens of thousands of bees burrowed in and buzzed inside, making her dizzy, and her expression changed again and again. If Qinlai were here, he would never have allowed Wu Xiaoheng to say so much to agitate Song Jining. But in Wu Xiaoheng's opinion, his mother had always been a strong woman. Hiding these things from her was the greatest harm to her. I didn't hear what you said just now clearly. Can you say it again? Song Jining elegantly placed the glass of water on the small table next to the operating chair. Although her face was still pale, there was not much change. Is your father still a soldier? Of course, he's already a general now. Wu Xiaoheng lowered his eyes. Also, he divorced Mother 10 years ago. This is the first night watch. Dear friends, hurry up and give me your monthly and recommendation votes. I went to the group yesterday to send red packets to wish everyone a happy Mid-Autumn Festival, but I couldn't send red packets because of that scheming boy Tencent. In the end, I had no choice but to agree to the girls' request and make it up to them today. So there will be 3 nights today. The second night watch will be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the third night watch will be at 7 o'clock in the evening. It can be considered a Mid-Autumn Festival gift for everyone. P.S. Thank you Mo Qinjuan for the gift yesterday. Moi. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.